This is the capital. The heir of the Chu family sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. I suggest you learn some humility. They united the most powerful families from the capital to Hong Kong, pooling 500 billion yuan for a single purpose, to financially execute Ethan Yi and carve up his trillion-dollar empire. To them, he was an arrogant upstart who appeared from nowhere, a loose end. They didn't know the man his materialistic ex once called less than an ant. They couldn't see the cultivator whose power was so vast. The nation's top secret agency tried to recruit him, not punish him. And they never imagined that as they launched their all-out assault, Ethan was already in their home territory, preparing to seize their parent companies in a single, devastating move. They think they can challenge me with a paltry sum? Ethan chuckled to his subordinate. It's time for a home-swapping gambit. They came to destroy his company. They'll be lucky to escape with their lives. Chapter 51. Led by Serena Xia, Peter Zhao arrived at a quaint courtyard. A woman in a white dress and veil sat at a stone table. Though he tried, he couldn't make out her features. As he sat, a faint fragrance wafted from her, captivating him. Flora Hua, accustomed to such reactions, poured him a cup of tea. She asked him gently if he would answer a question for her. Peter eagerly agreed. Flora noted that poetry was not his known strength, and asked how he had composed such a fine verse. Peter admitted that his friend, Ethan, had written it and gifted it to him. Flora inquired if this was the same Ethan Yi with whom he was so close, and Peter confirmed it, praising Ethan as a truly remarkable man. After this, Flora claimed to be tired and dismissed him. Once Peter had been escorted out, Serena returned to the courtyard. Flora, who was in fact the current saintess of the 100 Flowers sect, sent into the mortal world to gain experience and scout for talent, confessed her curiosity about Ethan and instructed Serena to investigate him. Back in the private room, Ethan noticed Peter's dazed state upon his return. He placed a finger on Peter's forehead and channeled a trace of spiritual energy, shouting for him to wake up. Peter's eyes cleared, and he asked how he had gotten back from his tea with Flora. Ethan explained that he had been enchanted and that it was time to leave. At Shanghai First Hospital, the director, Dr. Simon C., and a group of orthopedic specialists stared at an X-ray. The arm was shattered in more than a dozen places. None of them dared to suggest a definitive plan. An injury this severe could not be perfectly healed, and they feared repercussions from the powerful Han family. Dr. C. had to call the family patriarch, Franklin Han, in the capital. He explained that any surgery would likely result in permanent mobility issues for his son. The voice on the other end was cold. Franklin Han told him to ensure his son's condition didn't worsen, and that he would arrange for him to be brought back to the capital. After the call, Franklin's wife, Liana, anxiously asked for an update. He reassured her that he had a plan, then told her to prepare for Spencer's arrival while he went to request the help of Dr. Chi. Dr. Alistair Chi was a master of traditional medicine, a national treasure whose family had passed down secret medical techniques for generations. In his traditional courtyard manner in Beijing, Dr. Chi was teaching his granddaughter, Genevieve, about medicinal herbs when his apprentice announced that Franklin Han was there to see him. In the reception room, Franklin explained that his son, Spencer, had his arm shattered by a martial artist and begged Dr. Chi to save him. The doctor frowned. Martial artists rarely attacked ordinary people, especially the heir of a major family who would surely have protection. Considering his long-standing friendship with Spencer's grandfather, he agreed to help. Dr. Chi retrieved his medical case and a special brocade box before leaving with Franklin. By the time they arrived at the Han residence, Spencer had just been brought home. His mother Liana wept at the sight of her son's pain, vowing that the person who did this would pay. Spencer, though pale and trembling, managed to ask about his guard, Foam. His mother spat that the useless guard deserved to die for failing to protect her son. Chapter 52. Franklin Han arrived with Dr. Alistair Chi, rushing into the house. Spencer's mother, Liana, saw the doctor as her last hope, grabbing his sleeve and begging him to help her son. Franklin pulled her aside, telling her not to interfere. Dr. Chi examined Spencer's shattered arm with a grave expression. After a thorough inspection, however, he was inwardly relieved. The injury was severe, but not irreparable. It was clear the attacker had shown restraint. A truly malicious blow would have been far worse. The doctor was intrigued by this unknown martial artist who was both ruthless and merciful. Dr. Chi began to apply his family's traditional medical techniques. From the brocade box, he took out a mysterious purple paste, the legendary purple crystal bone-joining paste. He carefully applied it to Spencer's arm. The ointment seemed to come alive, quickly absorbing into the skin and bonding with the shattered bones. Under its miraculous effect, the fragments began to knit themselves back together. After the treatment was complete, Dr. Chi stood up, a faint smile on his face. Franklin grasped the doctor's hand, his voice trembling with gratitude, thanking him for saving his son's arm. Liana echoed his thanks, saying they would never forget his kindness. After seeing Dr. Chi out, the couple returned to their son's room and asked for the full story. Spencer recounted the events at the pleasure house. Franklin was secretly horrified. His guard, Foam, was a late-stage external force expert, yet he couldn't withstand a single blow from the opponent's protector. The enemy's strength was terrifying. After telling his son to rest, he pulled his wife from the room. He looked at her sternly and gave her a solemn warning. She was absolutely forbidden from seeking revenge. Liana was indignant, asking if her son's suffering was for nothing. Franklin explained that the opponent was at least an internal strength expert. Any attempt at retaliation would mean the destruction of both the Han family and her own family, the Lees. With that grim warning, he left without another word. The next day, around noon, Ethan, Elaine, and Peter arrived in the bustling metropolis of Macau. Peter suggested they head to the Macau Resort, a massive complex with a casino, shopping, and high-end restaurants. Elaine enthusiastically agreed. The resort was a grand, luxurious property on the coast. Peter went to handle the check-in while Ethan and Elaine explored the gardens. Once Peter returned, Elaine announced she was hungry, and Peter knew just the place, a local restaurant renowned for its unique cuisine. They ordered several specialties and feasted on fresh seafood, tender steaks, and other local dishes, with Elaine declaring it was all incredibly delicious. Looking at the empty plates on the table, Ethan jokingly asked if they wanted to order more, pointing out that other diners were staring. Elaine rubbed her full stomach and said she couldn't eat another bite. The three of them returned to their hotel rooms. As soon as they were back, Elaine started pleading with Ethan to take her to the casino that evening. She wanted to show the people of Macau the skills of the gambling saint of Jincheng, and take the house for all it was worth. Peter's eyes lit up at the idea, and he conspiratorially told Elaine that he was known as the gambling demon of the capital, and that together, they would be unstoppable. Ethan, speechless at their blustering, simply turned and went to his own room. Inside, he drew the curtains and began to cultivate, using the chaos scripture. The ambient spiritual energy was negligible, so he took out 3 spirit-gathering pills and consumed them. The pills were potent, flooding his meridians with power. As he circulated the energy, he could feel his cultivation level steadily rising. When the effect of the first 3 pills wore off, he was still short of the next stage, so he took 2 more. The fresh surge of power was immense. After repeated efforts, he finally felt a barrier within him shatter. He had broken through to the late foundation establishment stage. Just then, a sharp knock came at the door. Ethan extended his spiritual sense and perceived his sister, Elaine, waiting outside, clearly impatient to get to the casino. He opened the door to see her bouncing on her feet with excitement. She explained that she had only ever seen casinos in movies and was dying to experience the thrill for herself. She grabbed his hand and pulled him out of the room. Led by Peter, the 3 of them soon arrived at the resort's casino. Ethan and Elaine were stunned by the opulent, glittering hall. A sharply dressed staff member greeted them and guided Ethan to the cashier, where he exchanged $2 million in chips. Ethan pocketed $10,000 for himself and handed the rest to Elaine, telling the 2 self-proclaimed gambling prodigies to begin their performance. Elaine immediately rushed to a roulette table and, without hesitation, placed a 1,000 yuan chip on the number 4, her lucky number. The croupier spun the wheel, and the small black ball danced around before finally settling on number 27. Elaine pouted, declaring that she was just warming up. She then dragged Peter to the dice tables, claiming it was her true area of expertise. Ignoring Ethan's silent exasperation, she proceeded to bet 10,000 on a specific triple. Peter was shocked by her audacity. The dice were revealed, and, unsurprisingly, she lost again. Undeterred, she bet on triples 6 more times in a row, losing every time. Her pile of chips began to shrink, and her expression grew grim. With her competitive spirit ignited, she took her remaining funds to a baccarat table, determined to win a game with better odds. She slammed 50,000 down on the player's side. After the cards were dealt, the dealer announced the player had won. Elaine leaped into the air, shouting that her warm-up was officially over and she was now ready to dominate. Unfortunately, her luck did not hold. Before long, Elaine had lost every single chip. She stared at Ethan, her eyes pleading for him to get more. Seeing that she had lost all rationality, Ethan sent a sliver of spiritual energy into her mind. The gambling fever instantly broke, and she was flooded with guilt. She looked down and apologized to her brother. Ethan gently stroked her hair, consoling her. He explained that the house almost always wins, and that the point of coming here was to learn to control one's desires. He told her not to worry about the money. She nodded, but admitted she was still upset about losing so much so quickly. Ethan smiled, telling her to cheer up. He reminded her of the 10,000 chip he still had in his pocket and promised to win her money back. He led them back to the roulette table and placed the entire 10,000 chip on the 0. As the wheel spun, a nearly imperceptible stream of spiritual energy flowed from his fingertips, guiding the ball. It settled neatly into the 0 slot. Elaine gasped. It was a 35-1 payout. Ethan calmly collected the massive pile of chips and handed them to her before heading to the dice tables. There, the process was even easier. He used his spiritual sense to see the numbers on the dice before the cup was lifted, telling Elaine where to place her bets. Every single bet was a winner. In a short amount of time, they had won back the entire 2 million they had started with. Peter stared at Ethan in awe, declaring that even the legendary god of gamblers would have to bow to his skill. Ethan just laughed it off. He asked if there was anything else fun to do, and Peter's eyes lit up as he suggested gem betting on another floor. Ethan was intrigued, wondering if his spiritual sense could penetrate the raw stones. The gem betting floor was much quieter than the casino. Elaine asked what they were selling. Peter explained the concept of stone gambling, betting on whether a rough, uncut stone contained valuable jadeite inside. Seeing Elaine's eager expression, Ethan told her to go ahead and pick one. She began tapping and patting the stones as if she were picking out a watermelon at the market. Ethan had to stop her, explaining that one was supposed to look at the color, texture, and patterns. She tried, but confessed that they all looked the same to her. Ethan scanned the stall with his spiritual sense. The stones were all worthless. He told her there was no luck here and they should try another vendor. His spiritual sense swept across the entire floor, and he was drawn to one particular stall. As they approached, Elaine's eyes were immediately captured by a watermelon-sized stone with a smooth, polished-looking rind. She pointed to it, saying she just had a good feeling about it. Ethan smiled. His spiritual sense had already penetrated the stone, revealing a fist-sized, brilliant red jadeite of the highest quality. He nodded, telling her to buy it, and then he selected 3 more stones for himself. The stall owner was thrilled, calculating the total for the 4 stones to be 5 million yuan. Ethan was more than satisfied with the price. Knowing what was inside the stones, he would have paid 10 times that amount without hesitation. After paying, the 3 of them borrowed a small cart from the stall owner and headed for the cutting area. Peter found a stone cutter, and after a brief negotiation, the work began. Elaine's chosen stone was first. As the cutter made the first slice, a dazzling red light burst forth from within the stone, as if a sun were rising. "It's a glass-type red jadeite," the cutter cried out in shock. His shout caused a stir, and soon a large crowd had gathered around them, people murmuring in disbelief at the sight of such a high-quality gem. Ethan sighed internally, thinking about how they would react when the yellow and purple jadeites were revealed. He raised a hand to quiet the crowd, asking them to wait until all the stones were cut. The cutter, composing himself, proceeded with the next 3 stones. About half an hour later, the work was done. Displayed before them were the brilliant red jadeite, a top-grade translucent purple jadeite, a vibrant top-grade yellow jadeite, and a slightly lesser, but still valuable, ice-type jadeite. The crowd erupted. They couldn't believe their eyes. For stones, all of them winners, with 3 being of legendary quality. It was a run of luck so incredible it felt like something out of a movie. A stout man pushed his way through the crowd, introducing himself as Howard Huang, the general manager of Wanlong Jewelry. He offered to buy the stones at any price. But Ethan, seeing Elaine's protective glare, politely declined. As the 3 of them left the gem betting floor, followed by the envious stares of the crowd, the original stall owner was filled with regret. He immediately started cutting his own remaining stock, hoping to recoup some of his perceived losses. The crowd, inspired by what they had witnessed, swarmed his stall, buying up every last stone. They rushed to the cutting area, but their hopes were dashed. Almost all the stones were worthless rock. The stall owner himself got lucky with a single, egg-sized piece of ice-type jadeite, a small consolation. Back at the hotel, Peter was staring at Ethan with such intensity that it made Ethan uncomfortable. He sighed, took out the ice-type jadeite, and tossed it to him, teasing him for losing his composure. Peter caught the gem as if it were a holy relic, explaining that even this piece was worth well over 10 million yuan. Elaine, who had been dozing off, perked up at the mention of money and asked how much her red jadeite was worth. Peter thought for a moment and estimated it would fetch at least 100 million. As Elaine's eyes began to glaze over with images of piles of cash, Ethan quickly interrupted her daydream, suggesting they all go get some dinner. As always, the prospect of food was the one thing that could immediately capture her full attention. The 3 entered the restaurant. Despite it being past the dinner rush, the place was still bustling. A server led them to an empty table. Elaine eagerly grabbed the ordering tablet and selected enough food for 5 people. Before passing it to Ethan and Peter, who barely glanced at it before handing it back. Confused, Elaine asked if they weren't hungry. Ethan sighed, pointing out she had ordered a mountain of food and warned her she'd be in trouble if she couldn't finish it. Peter stifled a laugh, but when he saw Elaine's death glare, he quickly claimed he was just happy because his dog had puppies. This, oddly, made Elaine blush faintly. Soon, the dishes arrived, and the 3 of them began to eat and chat happily. Just then, a familiar figure entered Ethan's line of sight, his materialistic ex-girlfriend, Mia Meng. Dressed in luxury brands, she was on the arm of a middle-aged man, and they were heading for the table next to theirs. Mia noticed Ethan and shot him a provocative look. Her companion, sensing the tension, asked if she knew them. Mia scoffed, saying Ethan was just some guy she dumped, and that her heart belonged only to him. Elaine immediately piped up, muttering about how the air had suddenly started to smell bad, as if a cheap tramp had walked in. Mia's face darkened, and she pointed a finger at Elaine, calling her a little brat before throwing herself into the arms of her date, feigning distress. The man, whose name was Felix Liu, chairman of the Hong Kong-based Fuda Group, glared at them. He warned the young upstarts not to be arrogant in Macau, a place where people could easily disappear. He then turned his leering gaze on Elaine, inviting her for a drink and promising to buy her designer bags. Enraged that this fat old man was hitting on her, Elaine grabbed a glass of water and threw it in his face. Soaked and furious, Felix raised his hand to strike her. Before he could, Peter shot up from his seat and kicked him to the ground. Felix clutched his chest, his face a mask of rage. Mia rushed to help him up, then turned on Ethan, screaming that he was in big trouble and that compared to Chairman Liu, he was less than an ant. Ethan slowly stood up, his eyes cold. He was appalled that Felix had not only harassed his sister, but had also tried to hit her. He walked towards them, telling Mia she was as vain and foolish as ever, and that he had almost forgotten her until she insisted on reappearing. He then addressed Felix Liu, telling him to bring on any revenge he was planning, but that he wouldn't be able to handle the consequences. As he spoke, Ethan secretly circulated a thread of spiritual energy and injected it into Felix's body, precisely destroying a key meridian. From that moment on, Felix Liu would never function as a man again. Peter, meanwhile, was bragging to Elaine about his heroic kick. He chimed in, daring Felix to come after him. Felix knew he was outmatched for now. He struggled to his feet, spat a few threats, and dragged Mia away. Back in their room, Mia urged Felix to get revenge. He, seething from the humiliation, agreed. He then told her to help him cool off. Mia's face flickered with disgust, but she quickly put on a seductive act and knelt to serve him. However, no matter what she did, Felix remained completely unresponsive. His face grew darker and darker until he shoved her away, wondering what had suddenly gone wrong with his body. Back in the restaurant, Elaine apologized to Ethan, thinking her impulsiveness had caused trouble. Ethan gently reassured her that she did nothing wrong, and that people like that needed to be taught a lesson, otherwise they would only become bolder. Reassured by her brother, Elaine's gloom vanished. She excitedly suggested they go shopping the next day at Macau's huge shopping centers. Peter interjected that for a real shopping paradise, they should go to Hong Kong, where the variety was greater and the latest trends arrived first. Elaine's eyes lit up, and she looked at Ethan hopefully. Not wanting to disappoint her, Ethan agreed. They decided to take the ferry to Hong Kong the next morning. Back in their rooms, Ethan sent a text to Nina Lee, asking when would be a good time to visit her parents. Nina, back in her dorm, replied with a smile. She told him to come with her after her exams, and that her mother was eager to meet him. This was a great relief to Ethan. He then asked what her parents liked, worrying that showing up empty-handed would get him kicked out by his future mother-in-law. The phrase future mother-in-law made Nina blush. She cheekily replied that it was up to him to choose, and that if he chose poorly, he might not get to marry such a wonderful girl. Her roommates, seeing her grinning at her phone, began to tease her. Bella Lee joked that Nina should just marry Ethan now, since it was allowed in college. Shannon Sure added that Nina had probably already spent a few nights with him. Nina, blushing to the roots of her hair, denied it, though in her heart, she already considered herself Ethan's. Ethan, meanwhile, was genuinely stressed. This was his first time meeting his girlfriend's parents, and he wanted the gift to be perfect. He decided he would have to find something special in Hong Kong. The next morning, urged on by an impatient Elaine, the three of them caught an early ferry. About half an hour later, they arrived in Hong Kong and took a taxi to the famous Harbor City shopping mall. Meanwhile, at Hong Kong Central Hospital, Felix Liu sat anxiously before Dr. Marcus Wu, the city's top urologist. Since the incident the previous day, his little brother had been completely unresponsive. Dr. Wu frowned at the test results. He explained that all of Felix's vitals were normal. He gently suggested that perhaps it was due to recent overexertion or psychological stress. Felix considered this. He had been with Mia quite a bit lately. But deep down, he knew this was different. He'd never experienced a complete lack of response before. He insisted the doctor prescribe him some special medication. Reluctantly, Dr. Wu wrote a prescription, warning him to use it with caution. At Harbor City, Elaine was immediately captivated by the mall's dazzling opulence. She announced she was going to explore on her own and told Ethan to go pick out gifts for Nina. Worried she might get into trouble, Ethan asked Peter to keep an eye on her while he looked around. As Ethan wandered through the massive shopping center, he spotted a store called Hong Kong China Nutrition. A clerk noticed him hesitating at the door and warmly invited him in, explaining they had a wide variety of rare supplements and high-quality health products, perfect for gifts. Encouraged by the clerk's enthusiasm, Ethan explained he was looking for gifts for his future in-laws. The clerk's eyes lit up, and he began recommending premium teas and health supplements. He detailed the benefits of an imported fish oil rich in omega-3s for cardiovascular health, and bird's nest, a traditional delicacy known for its rejuvenating properties. Ethan was impressed. He decided to get gifts not only for Nina's parents, but for his own parents and Nina as well. He told the clerk he wanted 5 sets of everything he had just mentioned, including the teas. The clerk was overjoyed at the massive sale and hurried to package everything beautifully. After paying, Ethan left the store. He found a deserted corner, and with a thought, moved all the gift boxes into his system storage space. With his hands free, he continued to stroll through the mall. Elsewhere, Elaine was in a shopping frenzy, and Peter was suffering, buried under an avalanche of shopping bags. He pleaded with her, saying there was literally no more space on his body to hang another bag. Elaine laughed, admitting she might have overdone it, and they found a place to sit. A moment later, she remembered something and rushed off, leaving Peter to guard the mountain of purchases. She returned shortly with 2 more large bags, triumphantly announcing she'd almost forgotten the latest Chanel suit. She had bought 2, one for herself and one for Nina. Just as they were about to find Ethan, he emerged from the deserted corner where he had just finished his own shopping spree, having bought dozens of Patek Philippe watches and numerous LV belts and wallets to store in his system space for future gifts. Elaine immediately grew suspicious. She demanded to know why he was coming out of a secluded corner and accused him of following a pretty girl. Ethan, dumbfounded by his sister's imagination, claimed he thought it was a restroom. Unconvinced, she then pointed out that he hadn't bought a single thing, gesturing to the human coat rack that was Peter Zhao. Ethan, trying not to laugh, calmly explained that he'd had everything shipped directly to Shanghai to avoid the hassle. Seeing that Elaine was about to press further, he quickly changed the subject, urging her to ship her own things to spare poor Peter. Using his spiritual sense, he located a shipping service nearby and led them there. After they had finished mailing their packages, Peter received an urgent call from his father in the capital, demanding he return home immediately. With a grave expression, he apologized to Ethan and Elaine, explaining that he had to leave. Ethan told him not to worry and to call if he needed anything. With that, Peter rushed to the airport to catch the first flight back. With Peter gone, Elaine's enthusiasm for their trip evaporated. She told Ethan she wanted to go back to Shanghai, saying she suddenly missed Nina. Ethan agreed, and the 2 of them headed for home. Meanwhile, Felix Liu had learned of their location and stormed Harbor City with a group of his men, but he was too late. Ethan and his companions were long gone. In the capital, the Zhao family patriarch, Jason Zhao, was questioning his eldest son, Leon. He wanted to know if the news about his younger son Peter's conflict with Spencer Han was reliable. Leon confirmed that their informant inside the Han family had reported Spencer's broken arm and his subsequent healing by Dr. Chi. Jason decided to wait for Peter's return to get the full story, but instructed Leon to monitor the Han family closely for any signs of retaliation. Back in Shanghai, as Ethan and Elaine exited the airport, a woman blocked their path. Ethan recognized her as Serena Xie from the Qing Lu. Serena smiled and explained that her mistress, Flora Hua, greatly admired Ethan's talent and had sent her to extend an invitation for a private meeting. Ethan, who had suspected Flora might be a cultivator ever since Peter was enchanted, decided to accept. He sent Elaine back to the Cloud9 villa and left with Serena. They arrived at a quiet courtyard on the outskirts of the city where Flora was waiting. She greeted him graciously and led him inside. Once inside, before Flora could speak, Ethan cut to the chase. He told her there was no need for pleasantries, as she had clearly already investigated him, and asked her to state her business. Flora, taken aback by his directness, admitted that she had initially been interested in his talent, hoping to recruit him as an agent for her sect in China. However, her investigation suggested he was also a powerful martial artist. She apologized for her presumption and asked about his cultivation level. Ethan scanned her with his spiritual sense. As he suspected, she was a cultivator at the peak of the Qi refining stage. This was a chance to learn more about the cultivation world. He calmly replied that he had just recently broken through to the foundation establishment stage. Flora was stunned. She had thought he was merely a martial artist, not a fellow cultivator who had already reached such a high realm. A talent like his was exceedingly rare. She sincerely offered, on behalf of the 100 Flowers sect, the position of honorary elder. Ethan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked his system if purchasing a position in a sect counted as a transaction and if he could get cashback for using spirit stones. The system confirmed that it did. 1 low-grade spirit stone was worth 1 point, 1 mid-grade was worth 100, and so on. Satisfied, Ethan turned back to Flora and asked if the sect's positions were for sale. For instance, how many spirit stones for an elder? Or a supreme elder? Flora was dumbfounded. She couldn't understand why he would want to pay for a position he was being offered for free. She stammered that the sect had no precedent for selling positions. Ethan waved her off, telling her to contact her sect. He offered 50 supreme-grade spirit stones for the position of honorary supreme elder. Flora was too shocked to speak. As the saintess of the sect, her annual cultivation allowance was a mere 50 mid-grade spirit stones. Ethan was offering 50 supreme-grade stones. He had to be insane. In the meeting hall of the 100 Flowers sect, the atmosphere was tense. The sect master, Dahlia Hua, and the elders discussed the unbelievable offer. One elder voiced his disbelief, noting that the entire sect's reserve of supreme-grade spirit stones was barely 50. Another agreed, saying the claim was too fantastic to be true. Dahlia Hua silenced them, proposing a solution. If the young man truly produced 50 supreme-grade spirit stones, they would grant him the title of Honorary Supreme Elder. If he couldn't, they would still offer him the position of Honorary Elder. A genius of his caliber was an asset, even without a fortune, and posed no risk to the sect. The elders agreed, and the decision was relayed to Flora. Flora immediately found Ethan and told him the good news. The sect had agreed. If he could contribute 50 supreme-grade spirit stones, he would be named Honorary Supreme Elder. Without a moment's hesitation, Ethan retrieved the 50 stones from his system space and placed them in Flora's hands. As he did, a pleasant voice sounded in his mind, congratulating him on spending 50 supreme-grade spirit stones and rewarding him with 50 million points. Ethan broke into a wide, happy grin. Flora, seeing his joyful, almost childlike expression, couldn't help but laugh. She then asked when he might be able to visit the sect to meet the disciples and receive his official identity token. Ethan replied that he was busy at the moment, but would let her know when he had time. At that same moment, Peter Zhao arrived at his family's estate in the capital. His older brother, Leon, immediately pulled him towards their father's study. Peter was confused, insisting he hadn't caused any trouble or wasted any money recently. Leon grimly reminded him of Spencer Han's injury. In the study, their father, Jason Zhao, was finishing a piece of calligraphy. He calmly asked Peter to recount the entire incident. Peter held nothing back, telling them about meeting Ethan and Elaine, the encounter with Flora Hua, and how Spencer Han's guard was crippled by one of Ethan's protectors. Jason Zhao was profoundly shocked. A Grandmaster-level guard. The background of this Ethan Yi was terrifying. He smiled warmly at his younger son, asking about his relationship with Ethan and suggesting he invite him to their home for a visit. Peter proudly pulled out the ice-type jadeite, boasting that he and Ethan were great friends and that this was a gift from him. Leon watched his brother's smug display and had to laugh. The fool had stumbled into a connection with an extraordinary figure. Perhaps he needed to learn a thing or two about being a spendthrift himself. Back at the Cloud9 villa, Ethan browsed the system store. He was delighted to see he could now purchase spirit stones at a favorable exchange rate. He used 6 million of his new points to buy a space core to upgrade his system storage and 500 more supreme-grade spirit stones. The system informed him the upgrade would take 12 hours. He then went to find his sister for dinner. Bianca had already prepared a lavish meal. Elaine was stuffing her face, and Ethan watched her with an affectionate smile, teasing her about her table manners and how she would ever find a husband. Elaine, her mouth full, mumbled that she didn't need to get married. Her brother and future sister-in-law could take care of her forever. After dinner, Elaine went upstairs to rest, but Ethan felt the urge to go for a walk. It had been a long time since he'd simply strolled through the streets. Under the dim yellow streetlights, he walked aimlessly, observing the busy figures around him. Not long ago, he was one of them, fighting for a better life. Now, with immense wealth and the power of a cultivator, he was on a different plane entirely. Lost in thought, he found himself at an old woman's street-side food stall. She smiled kindly at him and asked what he'd like to eat. He told her to just prepare a few skewers of whatever she recommended. She pointed to a small stool and told him to wait. Soon, she brought over a large bowl of steaming spicy skewers. She told him to ask for more if he was still hungry on the house, because she knew how hard life was for young people these days. The food wasn't gourmet, but it warmed his heart. As he finished, the peaceful scene was shattered by the arrival of 3 thuggish-looking young men. They were dragging a boy of about 16, dressed like a student. One of them yelled at the old woman, whom he called Grandma Wei, claiming her grandson, Winston, had just scratched his car. He demanded 2,000 yuan, or else. The old woman, frantic, promised to pay. She pulled out a faded handkerchief, but one of the thugs snatched it. Finding only about 300 yuan inside, he flew into a rage and kicked at Winston. A pained shriek filled the air, but it came from the thug. The man was now on the ground, clutching his own foot in agony. Ethan had intervened. Ethan rose and asked Winston to explain what really happened. The boy explained that he hadn't hit their car at all. They had intentionally knocked him off his bike, beaten him, and dragged him here. One of the other thugs threatened Ethan, telling him to mind his own business. When Ethan didn't react, he and his friend charged. With a flicker of movement, Ethan sent both of them flying. Ethan coldly told the 3 thugs to get lost and never come back. Winston watched, stunned, wondering if this was a real martial arts master from the novels he loved. Grandma Wei and Winston rushed over to thank him. Winston, his eyes full of hope, then asked Ethan if he would accept him as a disciple and teach him martial arts. The request surprised Ethan. As a cultivator, he couldn't just take on any student. He asked his system if there was a way to check someone's aptitude. The system replied that a cultivation potential assessment would cost 100 points. Ethan decided it was worth it. A moment later, the results appeared in his mind. Name, Winston Wei. Aptitude, high grade. Comprehension, high grade. Fortune, high grade. The results were outstanding. Ethan thought it might be fun to take on a disciple. He looked at the boy's expectant face and asked if he was truly determined. Winston nodded emphatically. Ethan smiled and agreed. Overjoyed, Winston left his contact information with Ethan, who promised to find him once he had taken care of some other matters. As Ethan walked away, Winston excitedly told his grandmother that he finally had a master and would soon be able to protect her. The next morning, Ethan woke early. It was the last day of Nina's exams, and he wanted to surprise her. He went to the garage and chose the Rolls-Royce Cullinan, driving to a nearby flower shop. He told the young woman running the shop to fill the entire trunk of his car with red roses. She and her boyfriend worked for a long time, carefully arranging the roses into a large heart shape inside the spacious trunk. Ethan placed the Heart of Eternity necklace he had won at auction in the center of the roses, paid, and drove to Shanghai University. He parked in front of Nina's dormitory and waited. About half an hour later, students began to emerge from the exam hall, including Nina. She spotted him and walked over, a bright smile on her face. He led her to the back of the car, telling her he had a small gift. He opened the trunk. The sight of the trunk filled with a heart of perfect red roses made her gasp. She threw her arms around him, thanking him and telling him how much she loved it. Ethan whispered in her ear for her to look closer. Her eyes scanned the roses again and found the dazzling necklace nestled in the center. She recognized the famous Heart of Eternity and covered her mouth in shock, speechless. Nearby, Nina's roommates watched, envious, quietly taking photos of the romantic scene without disturbing them. Ethan gently reminded Nina that since her vacation had started, it was probably time for him to meet her parents. Blushing, Nina fled back into her dorm to pack, texting her mother that Ethan was coming to visit that day. Her mother, Jean Young, was thrilled. She immediately called her husband, Charlie, telling him to take the rest of the day off while she rushed to the market. In the community garden, her neighbors asked why she was shopping so early. Jean happily announced that her daughter's boyfriend was coming over. After she left, the gossiping began anew, with the women speculating that Nina's rich boyfriend must be an old man. Back at the university, Nina came down with her things. She told Ethan she had driven her own car and challenged him to a race to her house. Halfway there, Ethan stopped at a high-end liquor and tobacco shop, buying 2 cases of premium Moutai and 10 cartons of Zhonghua cigarettes. When he arrived at the residential complex, Nina was already waiting for him. She laughingly declared victory and led him inside. As they reached her apartment door, she noticed his nervousness. He admitted he was a bit anxious about meeting her parents for the first time. The door opened, and Jean greeted them with a warm smile, ushering Ethan inside. She gave him some fruit and then pulled Nina into the kitchen, reminding her of her earlier instructions. Nina looked blank. Her mother sighed and told her to take Ethan for a walk around the neighborhood, especially through the garden, to shut up the gossips. Back in the living room, Nina relayed her mother's request to Ethan. He tried not to laugh, amused that his gift of a car had started such rumors. He agreed, suggesting they also retrieve the gifts he'd left in his car. At the car, Ethan moved the gifts he'd purchased from his system space to the back seat. He handed Nina a set of tea and supplements meant for her, while he carried the sets for her parents. He also slipped 2 Patek Philippe watches, worth $1 million each, into his pocket. As they strolled through the garden, they were immediately approached by the group of gossiping women. One of them asked Nina if this was her boyfriend. Nina proudly introduced Ethan. Another woman commented on the expensive-looking gifts, asking if the luxury car was also a present from him. Nina beamed, replying that she had tried to refuse, but Ethan had insisted. Ethan politely greeted the women, then excused himself and Nina, saying they shouldn't keep her parents waiting. Once they were gone, the women started whispering again, remarking on how handsome and generous Ethan was. But the woman with the mole on her lip sniffed dismissively, saying that while he wasn't an old man, relationships with rich men never last. When they returned to the apartment, Nina's father, Charlie Lee, was home. He greeted Ethan warmly, telling him he shouldn't have brought so many gifts. Ethan, who had been worried about making a good impression on Nina's father, was relieved. He explained it was his first visit and he wasn't sure what they liked. Soon, a huge feast was ready, and they all sat down to eat. Charlie asked his wife if he could have a little liquor to mark the occasion. Jean relented, warning him not to overdo it. Charlie gleefully retrieved a bottle of aged Moutai he'd been saving and poured generous glasses for himself and Ethan. Jean kept piling food onto Ethan's plate, while Charlie toasted him. He told Ethan that Nina was a quiet girl who sometimes kept her feelings bottled up and asked him to be patient with her. He added that they were very happy for them and that Nina had been talking about him for a long time. Jean playfully complained that her husband was her daughter's only confidant. Charlie then asked Ethan about his intentions. Ethan calmly replied that since Nina was on her summer break, he planned to take her to his hometown of Jincheng to meet his own parents, and asked for their blessing. Charlie and Jean looked at each other and readily agreed, saying it was up to the two of them. Nina, who had been quiet the whole time, blushed deeply, her face a picture of pure happiness. Afterward, Charlie and Jean asked Ethan about his family, and he answered all their questions patiently. The atmosphere was warm and familial. As expected, Charlie drank a little too much. Jean shot him a look and helped him to their room to lie down. Ethan felt a bit awkward, but Nina reassured him with a smile, explaining that her parents had a love-hate relationship, and this was normal for them. As he was leaving, Ethan took the 2 Patek Philippe watches from his pocket and gave them to Nina to pass on to her parents. Back in his car, he circulated his spiritual energy to instantly dispel the effects of the alcohol and drove back to the villa. Elaine was waiting for him, pouting and demanding to know where he'd been. He explained that he was meeting Nina's parents and that it wasn't an appropriate occasion to bring her along, especially since she had been sleeping in when he left. Though she understood, Elaine demanded he make it up to her by taking her out for a big meal. Ethan then told her he was planning a trip back to Jincheng in a couple of days, and that she should get ready. She asked why they were suddenly going back, and he explained he was taking Nina to meet their parents. Her eyes lit up at the news that Nina was coming. A mischievous idea formed in her mind. She suddenly became the model's sister, telling Ethan he must be tired and should go rest. Confused by her abrupt change in demeanor, Ethan watched her dash back to her room. The moment her door closed, Elaine called their mother, Mei Wang. Before she could even speak, her mother's voice boomed through the phone, scolding her for not calling sooner. Elaine just giggled and told her she had important intel about her brother. Her mother scoffed, saying Ethan was always a good boy, unlike her, the little troublemaker. Elaine ignored the jab and excitedly announced, "Mom, big news. Brother is coming home in a few days, and he's bringing my future sister-in-law with him." Surprised. At first, her mother didn't react. Then the words sank in. "Wait, what did you say? Your brother is bringing his girlfriend home?" Her voice shot up several octaves. "Yes, you'd better get ready to welcome your future daughter-in-law." Elaine chirped. Before she could say more, she heard her mother shouting for her husband. Evan, our son is bringing his girlfriend home." The phone clattered, and Elaine shook her head with a smile, thinking how she must have inherited her mother's excitable personality. In the villa's garden, Mei excitedly told her husband, Evan Yi, the news. He dropped his gardening tools in shock, then burst out laughing. "Really? That's fantastic. Our little piglet is finally bringing home a prize. When are they coming?" Mei realized in her excitement she'd forgotten to ask for a date. She told him it would be in the next few days and declared they needed to go shopping for new clothes and that she needed a beauty treatment. Then she had another idea. "Evan, what if we get one room ready for them? That way, we might get to hold our grandchild sooner," she said, her face glowing with anticipation. Ethan had no idea that his surprise was already ruined, thanks to his sister. He slept in the next day and didn't head to Qingji Tower until around noon. At the entrance, the security guard recognized the big boss and quickly let him through. As he stepped into his company's office space, he felt a resentful gaze on him. He turned to see Wayne Wong staring at him mournfully. Ethan was surprised. It had been days. Was Wayne still working as a janitor? It seemed Luna Shun was serious about the month-long punishment. Before he could speak to Wayne, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Wayne Wong, are you slacking off again? Get over here and clean the reception room. Useless, no wonder you're stuck as a janitor at your age." Ethan's face immediately darkened. Wayne just patted his shoulder silently and went to do as he was told. Furious, Ethan went back to the elevator and headed straight for Luna Shin's office on the 23rd floor. Luna and Melinda Fong were talking when he stormed in. Seeing his expression, Luna asked what was wrong. Ethan ignored her and addressed Melinda first. "Go back and give your grandfather a message. Ask him if he wants his money or his life. He needs to choose one. Now you can go." Melinda turned pale and quickly left to report back to her family. Ethan then turned his cold gaze on Luna. "What is the situation with Wayne Wong?" "I agreed he could be a janitor for a month, but some front desk clerk feels entitled to yell at him and insult my friend. Tell me, was this your idea?" Luna understood his anger immediately. "Mr. Yi, I'm so sorry. It was an oversight on my part. I will punish them." Ethan looked at her, his voice devoid of warmth. "Fire all of them. Every single person involved. I don't care who it is. And I don't care if this company makes money or loses every penny. A new vice president will be arriving to represent my interests. I have to say, I am very disappointed in your performance so far." He turned and left without another word. Downstairs, he found Wayne and was about to leave with him when a woman blocked their path. "Wayne Wong, where do you think you're going? If you leave your post, you're fired," she shrieked. Luna, who had hurried down after Ethan, arrived just in time to see this. She marched forward and slapped the woman across the face. The woman stared in disbelief. "Cousin, you hit me? For a janitor?" Ethan stared at Luna. "So she's your family. Fine. You have 3 days to clear out every single parasite from the Shun family that's in this company. As for the empty positions, hire a headhunting firm and offer triple the salary to find top talent. I will explain this to your brother myself." He then pulled Wayne away and left. Downstairs, Ethan told Wayne to wait in the car while he called Sean Shin. He explained what had happened, and Sean, embarrassed, apologized profusely, admitting he had placed those relatives there when the company was short-staffed. Ethan accepted the apology then opened his system store. He spent 2,000 points to redeem a 5-star business genius, whom he named Hudson Yi, and dispatched him to Cosmic Investment to serve as the new VP. Back in the car, he asked Wayne why he hadn't said anything about being bullied. Wayne shrugged it off. It was nothing. Besides, the pay is good. They probably thought I was on your bad side since I got assigned janitorial duty, so they were trying to suck up to Luna by giving me a hard time. It really has nothing to do with her. Ethan nodded, then told Wayne that a man named Hudson Yi would be the new VP and would be mentoring him from now on. He then got out of the car, retrieved an LV belt and wallet from the trunk, and handed them to Wayne as a small gift from his trip to Hong Kong. Wayne grinned. Well, look at you, actually remembering to bring your big brother a present. Now get out of here and go see your girlfriend. Not long after Ethan left the company, his phone rang. The caller ID showed it was Zach Zhang from Jincheng. Ethan answered cheerfully, but Zach's voice was grim. He explained that Quinn Xian was in serious trouble. Quinn had asked him not to tell Ethan, but Zach felt he had to. Ethan's brow furrowed. Quinn was a powerful figure in Jincheng. For him to be in trouble, it had to be something major. Zach confirmed it wasn't official trouble, but had something to do with martial artists. That settled it. Ethan told Zach he was on his way back. He hung up and immediately called Nina and Elaine, telling them they were leaving for Jincheng right away. After a 2-hour flight, they landed. Ethan arranged for Elaine to take Nina home to rest while he rushed to the East Lake Hotel. He went straight to Quinn's office and found Zach Zhang was already there. Quinn was shocked to see him. Ethan looked at his friend's haggard face and asked for the full story. Quinn sighed, explaining that the son of an old enemy he had taken down years ago, a man named Felix Gu, had returned for revenge. Worse, the man was now a martial artist, having reached the early stage of internal strength. Quinn himself was barely at the external strength level. He said that if Owen Yi hadn't been there during their last encounter, he would have been killed. Ethan thought for a moment, then told Quinn that the first priority was to find the man, and that he would handle the rest. With that, he excused himself. He had to get home to see how Nina was settling in with his mother. After Ethan left, Quinn began making calls, using all his connections to locate Felix Gu. Zach tried to reassure him, but Quinn was worried. He suspected Felix Gu had a powerful sect backing him, and he feared dragging Ethan into his mess. Back at the villa, Ethan walked in to find his mother, May, glaring at him. He immediately panicked, wondering if she disliked Nina. But his mother's anger was directed at him. She berated him for abandoning his guest, who had traveled all the way from Shanghai, the moment they arrived. Just then, Nina came out of her room. Seeing May about to scold Ethan, she called out to her. May's expression instantly softened into a warm smile. She told Nina to go rest, explaining that she needed to teach her ill-mannered son a lesson. Nina quickly defended Ethan, saying he had already told her he had urgent business to attend to. May shot Ethan one last glare, warning him that she was letting him off easy this time only because Nina had spoken up for him. She then took Nina's hand and led her away, leaving Ethan standing there, bewildered. Elaine, who had watched the whole exchange, burst out laughing. Seeing his mother's obvious fondness for Nina, Ethan's earlier worries melted away. Elaine then asked where they were going for dinner, suggesting the East Lake Hotel. Just as Ethan was making the arrangements, his father, Evan Yi, rushed in, eagerly asking where his future daughter-in-law was. When Elaine told him she was talking with their mom in her room, he grumbled about not even getting a first look before disappearing to change. Elaine dissolved into giggles. "Brother," she said, "now that Nina's here, your status in this house has officially plummeted." In the bedroom, Mei Wang held Nina's hand, speaking earnestly. She told Nina that she was the first girl Ethan had ever brought home and that it was clear how much he liked her. She wished Nina had already graduated so she could start planning the wedding and get a grandchild soon. Nina blushed, pleased by her warm reception but a bit flustered by the talk of babies. Mei then asked what Nina's parents thought of the relationship. Nina replied that they liked Ethan very much and had no objections. Mei smiled, saying that she and Ethan's father would travel to Shanghai to meet them and discuss the children's future. Just then, Elaine burst in, announcing that Ethan had booked a private room at the East Lake Hotel and it was time to go. When they arrived, the hotel manager, Qin Shun, was waiting to greet them personally and led them to their room. Soon, a parade of exquisite dishes began to arrive. Elaine was about to dig in when a sharp look from her mother stopped her. Mei instead turned to Nina, enthusiastically recommending local Jincheng specialties like the braised pork belly and the 8 treasures tofu. Nina took a bite of the pork and her eyes lit up with surprise. She remarked on how delicious and not at all greasy it was. Ethan explained it was a famous dish from the late Qing dynasty, a piece of the city's intangible cultural heritage. Once Nina had started eating, Elaine looked pleadingly at her mother, who finally gave her the nod. The ensuing feeding frenzy made everyone at the table laugh. As Mei continued to heap food onto Nina's plate, there was a knock at the door. Quinn Xian, Zach Zhang, and Owen Yi entered. Quinn smiled warmly, greeting Ethan and asking if the beautiful young woman was his girlfriend. Ethan introduced Nina, then told the men that since it was Nina's first visit, he would join them in a little while. Quinn understood immediately, insisting that the meal was on him and that they should enjoy themselves. He and the others then excused themselves. A little later, Ethan told his mother and Nina that he was going to say a quick hello to Quinn and would be right back. He walked to Quinn's office, and as he entered, he was greeted by laughter. Quinn, Zach and Owen were waiting for him. Ethan sat down and asked Owen where Nini was. Before Owen could answer, Zach jumped in, explaining that Nini was with her godmother, Owen's pretty young secretary. Ethan smiled, telling Owen he was happy for him, and that it was good to move forward. Owen, blushing, insisted there was nothing going on. Quinn teased him, encouraging him to pursue the secretary, Autumn Lynn, for his and Nini's sake. Owen fell silent, and Ethan, knowing he was still grieving for his late wife, changed the subject, asking if there were any leads on Felix Gu. Quinn shook his head. Since the attack, the man had vanished without a trace. Ethan frowned. He couldn't stay in Jincheng forever, but he worried about what would happen to Quinn when he left. He decided to give him a protective talisman for now and would arrange for a shadow guard later if needed. Reaching into his pocket as if retrieving something, he pulled a low-level protective talisman from his system space and handed it to Quinn, who looked at the slip of paper in confusion. Ethan explained that it wasn't just paper, but an item that could save his life, capable of blocking an attack from a Grandmaster-level opponent for 10 minutes. At this, Owen and Zach's eyes widened, and they stared at Ethan expectantly. With a sigh, Ethan took out the remaining 4 talismans he had and told them to divide them amongst themselves. In the end, Owen took 1, while Quinn and Zach each took 2. Ethan then gave Owen 2 bottles of pills, spirit-gathering pills and boundary-breaking pills, explaining their effects. He told him to find a quiet place to break through to the next cultivation level and that he would be leaving. Back in the private dining room, the meal was finishing. The family of 4 returned home. As soon as they were inside, Elaine tried to drag Nina to her room, but their mother stopped them. She told Ethan that since it was still early, he should take Nina for a walk by East Lake. Elaine immediately piped up, suggesting they all go to the amusement park instead, but her mother shot her down, pulling her aside for a private talk. After they left, May scolded Elaine for being a third wheel and not giving the couple any space. Out in the yard, Ethan's father muttered about how he gets blamed for all of Elaine's bad traits. Outside the villa, Ethan asked Nina if she preferred the amusement park or a walk by the lake. She chose the lake. They walked hand in hand in the twilight. Looking at their reflections on the water's surface, Nina took a picture and quoted a poem. "The moon on the sea is the moon in the sky, and the person before me is the person in my heart." Ethan pulled her closer and replied, "There is no one else in my sight. All around me, there is only you." As they stood quietly together, a small, timid voice interrupted them. "Big brother, big sister, would you like to buy a flower?" Nina knelt to see a little girl of about 4 or 5. She asked why she was out selling flowers so late. The girl pointed to a man at a nearby stall, explaining she was with her father, who had told her that only the happiest people could have these beautiful flowers. Moved by the girl's hopeful eyes, Nina bought a single red rose and gave it to Ethan. The little girl skipped away happily, calling back that she only had 96 more to sell before her mother would come back. Nina's eyes grew moist. She stood up and looked at Ethan. "I read once that only a tiny fraction of men ever receive flowers, and for many, the first time is at their funeral. I'm giving this rose to you now, and I hope we can hold hands like this for the rest of our lives." Deeply touched, Ethan hugged her tightly. Nina tilted her head up. "Kiss me, Ethan," she whispered. He leaned down and kissed her with all the emotion he felt, and in that moment, the world fell away. After a long time, they broke apart. Nina looked around shyly and noticed a small crowd had gathered to watch them. Blushing furiously, she pulled Ethan away. Once they were clear of the onlookers, she playfully demanded that he carry her home as punishment for letting her be embarrassed. Ethan happily complied. As he walked with her on his back, feeling her warmth against him, he found himself wishing the road home was much, much longer. As they reached the front door, Nina, blushing, asked Ethan to put her down before her parents saw them. He reluctantly set her on her feet. The moment they stepped inside, Elaine ambushed them, grabbing Nina and pulling her into her room for some girl talk. Meanwhile, in a damp, musty basement across the city, a burly man named Felix Gu was drinking alone. He was still recovering from the injuries he'd sustained in his fight with Owen Yi. Suddenly, he heard footsteps outside. He tensed, grabbing a short blade from the table. The door opened to reveal a spirited-looking old man. A look of joy spread across Felix's face. It was his master, Jasper Jiang, one of the 5 elders of the Ethereal Valley. The elder tossed him a pill, telling him to take it and heal himself. Felix swallowed it immediately and began to meditate. Half an hour later, feeling fully recovered and even stronger than before, he went to find his master. Jasper Jiang was waiting in a nearby pavilion. He asked Felix for the full story of how he was injured. After hearing it, the elder chided him for his recklessness, telling him to always scout his enemy and strike decisively. He then promised to accompany Felix the next day to settle the score. Back at the villa, Ethan, curious about what his sister was up to, used his spiritual sense to peek into her room. He saw Elaine showing Nina an old photo album. She pointed to a picture of Ethan as a teenager with a pretty girl. She explained it was Molly M.O., who was now a flight attendant but had a huge crush on Ethan back then, though he had rejected her. Nina asked if many girls liked Ethan. Elaine boasted that countless girls had chased after her brother, and that she had received plenty of snacks and treats from them in exchange for information. She laughed, admitting she never passed on their love letters because it would have cut off her supply of free food. Nina laughed, saying Elaine must have ruined so many of her brother's romantic chances. After they finished teasing each other, Nina asked what kinds of things Ethan liked. Elaine thought for a moment and said she couldn't think of anything, calling him a boring and clueless guy who had to be reminded to buy Nina flowers when they first met. Then, a mischievous glint appeared in her eye. She told Nina that she had seen their mother only prepare one room for them, and that if Nina begged her, she might let her sleep in her room instead. Nina stood frozen, a mix of anticipation and panic on her face. She finally stammered that their mom would never do such a thing. Elaine just teased her about blushing. Just then, Mei Wang came in. She gently told Nina that her room was ready, right across the hall from Ethan's. She then turned to Elaine and told her to get to bed early, because she was being signed up for driving school the next day and was expected to get her license over the summer. Elaine tried to argue her way out of driving school, but a stern look from her mother silenced her. She sullenly agreed, muttering that she wouldn't disturb her brother and Nina's private time. After her mother left, Elaine dramatically told Nina that she needed to be alone to mourn her lost freedom. Nina just smiled and reminded her that Ethan had promised to buy her a car as soon as she got her license. That cheered her up instantly. Nina then went to her own room. As she passed Ethan's open door, their eyes met. She hesitated for a second, then walked into her room and closed the door. Inside his room, Ethan patted the spot next to him on the bed, inviting Nina to sit. As she did, she found herself blushing under his intense gaze. She closed her eyes, waiting for a kiss that never came. When she opened them, she saw Ethan tiptoeing towards his door. He suddenly threw it open, and Elaine, who had been listening outside, tumbled into the room. She scrambled to her feet, awkwardly explaining that she had seen an ant crawl in and was just trying to catch it. Ethan just stared at her. "Right? I think you're the big ant who likes to eavesdrop. Now get out of here," he said, exasperated. She giggled and scurried away. Mortified, Nina fled back to her own room. Ethan sighed. Other people's sisters created opportunities for their brothers. His only created chaos. The next morning, May was already back from buying a huge spread of breakfast. She saw Nina and told her to go wake Ethan and Elaine. Just then, Ethan came downstairs. He told his mother not to bother with Elaine, who never woke up early. Seeing the mountain of food, he teased his mother for buying enough to feed an army. She explained she didn't know what Nina liked, so she had bought a little of everything, urging Nina to try the local specialties like savory crepes and soybean curd. As they were eating, Ethan's phone rang. It was Quinn Xian. He answered, a sense of unease growing in him. Quinn's voice was frantic. "Felix Gu has reappeared. He's challenged me to a showdown at an abandoned building on the outskirts of town to settle things. He must have brought backup." Ethan's heart sank. He knew this was serious. He told Quinn not to go alone and that he was on his way. He hung up and apologized to Nina, explaining that he had to go. She understood, telling him to be careful and come back soon. Ethan rushed to the East Lake Hotel, where Zach and Owen were already with Quinn. He immediately asked if Quinn had seen Felix Gu yet. Quinn shook his head and handed Ethan a letter that had been delivered that morning. After reading it, Ethan's expression was grim. "Let's go. With me here, you have nothing to fear." As they were about to leave, he turned to Zach. "You should stay here. It's too dangerous." Zach knew he would only be a liability and reluctantly agreed. On the way to the abandoned building, Ethan asked Quinn if he had the talismans he'd given him. Quinn confirmed he had both, as they were life-saving items. He then asked Owen if he had given his talisman to Nini. Owen nodded. After breaking through to the Grandmaster realm, he felt he no longer needed it as much as his daughter did. Quinn then handed one of his own talismans to Owen, telling him to take it for extra protection. They arrived at the desolate, rundown building. Ethan couldn't help but wonder what fool would try to develop a property in such a remote place. He spotted two figures on the roof. "Hey, come on down," he yelled. A voice from above yelled back, "You come up." Ethan shrugged and shouted, "Sorry, I have a fear of heights. If you don't come down, we're leaving." He made a show of turning to go. The two figures on the roof, Jasper Jiang and his disciple Felix Gu, exchanged glances. They had no choice but to descend. Once they were on the ground, Ethan addressed the older man. "Old man, what can I do for you? Let's hear it." Jasper was stunned. He was an elder of the Ethereal Valley, a man of immense prestige. To be called old man by this young upstart was an unspeakable insult. He was so enraged he could barely speak. Ethan feigned a look of realization. "Oh, you have a stutter, old man? Take your time. We can text if it's easier. You do know how to type, right?" Quinn and Owen struggled to suppress their laughter. Jasper could no longer contain his fury. He lunged at Ethan with an open palm. Ethan sidestepped the attack. Hey, you sneaky old codger. That was a cheap shot. Prepare to face my dragon-subduing palm. Hearing this, Jasper jumped back, assuming a defensive stance. But nothing happened. Ethan just grinned innocently. I was just kidding, old man. Don't get so worked up, you'll give yourself a stroke. You wretched boy. I'll kill you. Jasper roared, charging again. This time, Ethan shouted, taste my 7-star chaos palm, and met his attack head-on. The two palms collided, and both men were sent flying backward. Ethan picked himself up, wiped a trickle of blood from his lip, and said with a smirk, sorry, old man. Turns out I actually do know that move. Surprise. Jasper, unable to contain his rage any longer, spat out a mouthful of blood. As he prepared to attack again, Felix grabbed his arm, warning him not to fall for Ethan's provocations. Seeing Jasper calm down, Ethan cursed inwardly. He had realized the old man was slightly stronger than him, and that provoking him into a reckless rage was his best chance of winning. Old man, how about we make a deal? He offered. Jasper sneered. A deal? I am an elder of the ethereal valley. I don't make deals with just anyone. Ethan just reached into his coat and pulled out the mid-level attack talisman he had received as a reward from the system. He waved it menacingly. See this, old man? It's a nice little toy. My hand has a tendency to tremble sometimes. It would be a shame if it slipped and damaged the local plant life. Jasper felt the immense spiritual power radiating from the talisman, and his face went pale. He quickly pulled his disciple back. After Ethan put the talisman away, Jasper's demeanor changed completely. He smiled obsequiously. My young friend, please forgive my earlier rudeness. I think your proposal for a deal is an excellent one. We must, after all, protect the flora. Ethan was taken aback by Jasper's sudden change of tune. The old man was certainly adaptable. He pointed to a neat pile of bricks nearby. Old man, why don't you come have a seat over here? It's hard to talk when you're so far away. Jasper's eye twitched. An elder of his stature, sitting on a pile of bricks? But, seeing no alternative, he complied. Ethan got straight to the point. Look, old man, this isn't a big deal. So what if my friend here killed Felix Gu's father? It wasn't even impersonally, and the guy who did it is already dead. How about this? I'll give you 10,000 mid-grade spirit stones as compensation, and we call it even. Or, I can give you 2,000 high-grade spirit stones, and you can take care of Felix yourself. Jasper stared at him, bewildered. He was actually trying to buy off a blood feud, and even offering to pay him to kill his own disciple. The 2,000 high-grade stones were tempting, but the damage to his reputation would be irreparable. The 10,000 mid-grade spirit stones will suffice to resolve this matter, Jasper finally said. Ethan pretended to go back to his car, but actually accessed the system store and redeemed 100 high-grade spirit stones. He stuffed them into a cracked, dirty plastic bag and handed it to Jasper. Sorry, old man, I don't have that many mid-grade stones on me. You'll have to make do with these. Jasper's face contorted in a silent scream of agony. This fool was carrying priceless high-grade spirit stones in a broken plastic bag. Since the matter is settled, we will take our leave, Jasper said through gritted teeth. Feel free to visit me at the ethereal valley sometime. He then dragged the sullen-faced Felix Gu away. Once they were out of earshot, Felix protested, but Jasper explained that the talisman Ethan held could have easily killed them both. They would have to be more strategic. With the threat gone, Quinn was immensely relieved. He invited Ethan for a celebratory drink, but Ethan declined, saying his mother had instructed him to take Nina out. He warned Quinn, however, that Felix would likely not give up so easily and would probably strike again once he felt strong enough. After returning to the hotel, Ethan drove back to the villa. Nina greeted him at the door, asking if everything went well. He assured her it had. He then asked where Elaine was, and Nina explained that her mother had forced her to go sign up for driving school. Just then, May came out and asked Ethan why his father was never home anymore. Ethan reminded her that she was the one who insisted his father manage the flower nursery. She huffed that he was spending so much time there she was starting to get suspicious. She then told Ethan to take Nina out and have some fun while Elaine was gone. Ethan asked Nina where she wanted to go, and she suggested the city's famous foreign-style street, followed by a ride on the Tianjin Eye Ferris wheel. Ethan led her to his Aston Martin 1-77, opening the door for her with a flourish. Nina played along, promising him a reward if he showed her a good time. As they drove, Ethan's mind was consumed by thoughts of the promised reward. The moment they arrived, Ethan couldn't help but ask for a hint. With a playful smile, Nina elegantly lifted the cuff of her jeans. Ethan's eyes widened, his heart pounding. She was wearing stockings underneath. He vowed to make sure she had the best day ever. Noticing his expression, Nina teased him, saying he could touch her leg if he was good, but not to get too carried away. Ethan confidently promised she would be more than satisfied. They got out of the car, and Ethan spotted a place renting tandem bicycles. They picked out a side-by-side model and started to pedal leisurely down the street. Soon, Nina spotted a wishing well. She dug a coin out of her purse, tossed it in, and made a silent wish for a long and happy life with Ethan, complete with a son and a daughter. When she opened her eyes, Ethan asked what she had wished for, but she just smiled mysteriously, saying it wouldn't come true if she told him. As they continued, they came across a statue. Nina asked who it was, and after a quick search on his phone, Ethan explained it was Marco Polo. This delighted Nina, who was an avid player of a mobile game where Marco Polo was a popular character. Ethan, realizing his quiet girlfriend was a secret gamer, quickly changed the subject, suggesting they stop for a drink. Nina blushed slightly and asked for a hot milk tea, explaining that it was that time of the month. Understanding immediately, Ethan ran to get her the tea and an iced Americano for himself. He asked if she felt unwell and wanted to go home, but she just smiled and said no, because she still wanted to ride the Ferris wheel and he wouldn't want to miss out on his reward. They returned the bike and headed for the Tianjin Eye. The line was long, filled mostly with couples. Unwilling to wait, Ethan used his money ability to procure 2 tickets almost immediately, presenting them to Nina with a theatrical bow. She laughed and took his arm, and soon they were ascending in their own private capsule. The Ferris wheel was built over a bridge, offering a stunning view of the river. As they looked out, Nina pointed to another bridge nearby where a large crowd had gathered, wondering what was going on. Ethan followed her gaze and chuckled. He explained that it wasn't an accident, but one of Tianjin's newest and most famous tourist attractions, the diving grandpas. Nina's eyes lit up, and she begged him to take her there after their ride. He agreed, then asked her a question. Were the couples lining up for the Ferris wheel locals or tourists? She guessed it was a mix, but probably more locals. Ethan playfully tapped her nose and told her she was wrong. They were almost all tourists. He explained a local superstition. Any couple who rides the Tianjin Eye together is destined to break up. It was locally known as the breakup wheel. Nina's face went pale. Can we get off now? She asked fearfully. Ethan burst out laughing. He told her not to worry, because their love was invincible. He then joked that if she was really scared, they could just go get married right away. To his surprise, she nodded seriously. The thought of being accused of eloping with an innocent young woman was enough to make him drop the subject. When the ride was over, they headed to the other bridge. A crowd was cheering on an old man in red swimming trunks who was preparing to dive from a platform. He executed a perfect arc into the water below. Nina was amazed. Ethan pointed out another man walking towards the platform, a world champion diver who had apparently joined in the fun. People of all ages and in all sorts of strange outfits were lining up to jump, not for technique, but for the sheer joy of it. The infectious happiness of the crowd had Nina cheering along. She exclaimed that it was no wonder Tianjin had the lowest rate of depression in the country. Ethan laughed, adding that all this happiness led to good appetites, which was why the city also had the highest obesity rate. As they watched, Nina spotted an old man selling candied hawthorn skewers. They bought one, and Nina took a bite, her face lighting up at the sweet taste. She offered some to Ethan, who agreed it was delicious. He told her that the secret ingredient was the joyful air of the city itself. Watching her laugh, Ethan couldn't resist. So, my beautiful lady, since you're having such a good time, I must have performed my duties well. When do I get my reward? He asked with a grin. Nina blushed and playfully scolded him for always thinking about that. Later, when we get home, she said. Trying to contain his excitement, Ethan took Nina's hand and said it was getting late and they should head home. Nina teased him for using his mother as an excuse, saying she knew exactly what was on his mind. Still, she followed him willingly to the car. When they arrived back at the villa, they found Elaine sulking on the sofa, while May fussed over Nina. Ethan sat down and playfully asked Elaine what was wrong, joking that the driving school must have rejected her for being too ugly. Elaine jumped up, indignant. She explained that she had been hoping to join them at the amusement park after her registration, but they had gone to the foreign-style street instead, leaving her to have fun all by herself. Ethan had to suppress a laugh. If they had gone to the amusement park, his romantic day would have been thoroughly ruined by his mischievous sister. Just then, his father, Evan, came home. May immediately started complaining that he spent all his free time at the flower nursery, and that if she didn't know better, she'd think he had a second family. Evan just smiled, explaining that his prized and rare orchid had finally bloomed. May cut him off, announcing she had something important to discuss. Once everyone was seated, she told Ethan that she and his father planned to travel to Shanghai with them to meet Nina's parents and formally settle their engagement. Ethan looked at Nina, who was blushing beautifully beside him, and agreed it was a good idea. Elaine piped up, excited at the prospect of playing tour guide for her parents in Shanghai. Just then, Ethan's phone rang. It was Peter Zhao. Ethan, my man, I heard you're back in Jincheng. My dad insisted I invite you to visit us here in the capital. Peter's voice boomed over the phone. Ethan thought for a moment. He didn't have any other urgent plans, so he agreed. All right, I'll be there tomorrow morning. I'm curious to see the famous prodigal son of the capital in his natural habitat, he joked. Peter promised to show him a good time. After he hung up, Elaine immediately started begging to go with them, claiming she had never been to the capital. Her mother rolled her eyes, reminding her of a family trip they had taken when she was a child, during which she had thrown a tantrum demanding roast duck. Elaine just whined that she didn't remember and pleaded with Ethan until he finally gave in. The next morning, at the crack of dawn, Elaine was banging on Ethan's door, yelling that they were going to be late for their high-speed train. He groggily got up, amused that his perpetually late-sleeping sister was so motivated when a trip was involved. He and a still-sleepy Nina were dragged out of the house by an energetic Elaine. They took a rideshare to the station, and soon they were on the train to the capital. Half an hour later, they arrived. Elaine immediately called Peter. "Peter, your lady has arrived at Beijing South Station. Where are you? Come and greet me at once." A sleepy and confused Peter, Zhao answered the phone. He glanced at the clock. It was just past 7 in the morning. He had expected them to arrive around 10. He quickly splashed some water on his face and rushed to Beijing South Station. Back at the station, Elaine was complaining loudly. "That lazy bum Peter, still in bed at this hour. When he gets here, I'm going to make him pay. What do you think, Nina? Roast duck? And stewed pork intestines, fried liver, copper pot hot pot, noodles with soybean paste. Maybe not the fermented mung bean juice, though. That stuff is nasty." Nina couldn't help but laugh. "They say everyone in Tianjin is a comedian, and it's true. You're not punishing him. You're just listing your favorite foods." Elaine blushed, realizing she had gotten carried away. 40 minutes later, Peter finally arrived, breathless and apologetic. Before he could speak, Elaine put her hands on her hips. Well, look who it is. Making us wait all this time. What's it going to be, a beating or a penalty?" Peter accepted his fate, saying he would accept any punishment. A sly grin spread across Elaine's face. "Since you're so sincere, I'll be merciful. Your punishment is to treat us all to roast duck." Peter waved his hand dismissively. "Is that all? I'll buy you as many ducks as you want." He then ushered them into his car, explaining they would go to the hotel first to settle in, and then to his family home for a proper welcome feast. They pulled up to the Dragon Bay Hotel, where the manager rushed out to greet Peter. "Young Master Zhao, good to see you. That romantic suite for two you always book? I've kept it reserved for you." Peter's face turned beet red. He coughed, trying to cover his embarrassment. "What are you talking about? My big brother is here from out of town. Get us a presidential suite, and be quick about it." He then leaned over and whispered to Ethan, "How about you and Nina take the couple's suite, and Elaine can have the presidential suite to herself?" The idea was tempting, but Ethan remembered Nina's visitor and regretfully declined. "The presidential suite is fine for all of us," he said. "But tell me more about this permanently reserved couple suite." Peter just boasted about his stamina. The manager escorted them to the top-floor suite. After showing them in, Peter told Ethan he would be back at noon to take them to his family's home. Once he was gone, Ethan chose a room and flopped onto the bed, a nagging feeling that he had forgotten something important. Just then, Nina walked in, and it hit him. He had completely forgotten about her reward. A wicked grin spread across his face as he patted the bed beside him. Nina blushed, teasing that his reward had expired since he didn't claim it the day before. As they were talking, Elaine burst in, telling them they might as well just share a room. Ethan shot her a glare, warning her that if she kept interrupting, she'd be staying home on their next trip. Elaine just stuck her nose in the air and declared she would follow him everywhere, then dragged Nina out of the room. Ethan shook his head, a wry smile on his face. He decided he needed to get a proper gift for his visit to the Zhao family. He opened the system store and redeemed a 1,000-year-old ginseng root. As he did, he commented aloud, "System, I feel like you've been pretty quiet lately." The system's voice, cold as ever, replied, "It's not that I've been quiet. It's that you, the host, have become lazy. You have no ambition, no desire to conquer the heavens." Ethan just shrugged. "What's wrong with being lazy? I'm living the life I always dreamed of. Why shouldn't I enjoy it?" The system fell silent, apparently speechless. Around noon, Ethan tucked the ginseng root into a Dragon Bay Hotel shopping bag and went to get the girls. Peter was waiting in the lobby and ushered them into a luxurious Maybach. 20 minutes later, they arrived at a magnificent traditional courtyard manor, flanked by two imposing stone lions. Peter proudly led them through the ornate gates, across winding corridors, and into a beautiful courtyard with rock gardens and a gentle stream. After a brief tour, a man in a crisp suit respectfully informed Peter that the banquet was ready and his father was waiting. Elaine's eyes lit up at the mention of food. They went to the main hall, where Jason Zhao was waiting. He greeted Ethan warmly, expressing his honor at having him as a guest. Ethan presented him with the shopping bag. "Uncle Zhao, a small gift for my first visit." Peter, seeing the hotel bag, asked what was inside. Ethan sheepishly explained it was a 1,000-year-old ginseng, and he had just used the first bag he could find. Jason's eyes widened. He carefully took out the precious root and placed it in a fine wooden box. He was dismayed, however, to see a few broken-off rootlets left in the bottom of the bag. Curious, Peter fished out one of the tiny root fragments and popped it into his mouth. "I don't feel anything special," he commented. The words were barely out of his mouth when 2 streams of bright red blood erupted from his nostrils. Everyone stared in shock. Ethan quickly stepped forward and channeled a stream of spiritual energy into Peter's body, helping him absorb the ginseng's potent power. The bleeding stopped. Elaine, who had watched the whole thing, pale with fright, made a mental note to never randomly eat anything her brother gave her. After changing his blood-stained shirt, Peter returned to the table, feeling a bit sheepish under everyone's stares. Why is everyone looking at me? I feel great. Dad, can we eat now? He asked, trying to sound casual. Before his father could reply, Elaine reached for a dish. But before her chopsticks could touch the food, Ethan's face hardened. He unleashed a wave of his spiritual sense directly at her. Elaine's face went white, and the chopsticks clattered from her numb fingers. Ethan turned to Jason Zhao. Uncle Zhao, my apologies. My sister is young and lacks manners. Please forgive her. Jason, who had felt the brief but powerful spiritual pressure, was inwardly shocked. He quickly waved it off, insisting they were all friends and there was no need for such formality. Everyone began to eat, except for Elaine, who sat frozen in her seat, staring at her brother with a look of pure betrayal. Nina tried to comfort her, but Ethan shot her a look that told her to stay out of it. If you don't want to eat, you can leave, he said coldly. Peter quickly tried to defuse the tension, raising his glass to Ethan and changing the subject. The 2 men drank, and Jason Zhao also raised his glass, thanking Ethan for his help with the Spencer Han incident in Shanghai. Ethan simply said it was what friends do, then asked if the Han family had caused any trouble for the Zhaos since then. Jason replied that, on the contrary, things had been quiet, and he'd heard that the renowned Dr. Alistair Chi had been called in to heal Spencer's arm. Ethan just nodded. The arm was healed, and it didn't matter to him. But if the Han family ever crossed him again, it would be more than just an arm. Jason then excused himself, leaving the young people to their meal. The moment he was gone, Elaine burst into tears. Brother, you were so mean, she sobbed. Ethan's expression remained stern. You're spoiled, he said, his voice sharp. You've forgotten all your manners. If you keep acting like this, I'll send you abroad by yourself. Elaine flinched, shrinking back in her chair, too scared to say another word. The mood at the table was ruined. Ethan told Peter to take them back to the hotel. In the hotel lobby, a curvaceous woman accosted Peter, pouting that he hadn't called her. Peter, flustered, quickly pulled her aside and whispered for her to wait for him in her room. He then took his friends up to the suite. As he was about to leave, Ethan grinned. Don't rush off. You should probably take it easy tonight. Peter just laughed. Brother, that ginseng is powerful stuff. I've got energy to burn. I gotta go. He practically ran out the door. Ethan returned to his room and used his spiritual sense to check on his sister. Just as he expected, Nina was in Elaine's room, trying to comfort the still crying girl. Elaine complained that her brother was a bully and she was never speaking to him again. Nina sighed and told Elaine gently but firmly that her behavior had changed recently. She had become entitled and bratty, and if she didn't reflect on her actions, she would end up pushing everyone away. With that, Nina left the room, leaving Elaine alone to think. Ethan retracted his spiritual sense, knowing Nina was on her way to him. A moment later, she quietly entered his room. Ethan shook his head, pushing the thoughts of his sister aside. He pulled Nina into his arms and asked if she had told her parents about his parents' planned visit to Shanghai. She said she hadn't yet, but would that night. Then she leaned in closer. So, about that reward you mentioned earlier? I'm here to deliver it now. Ethan's eyes lit up. With a devilish grin, he pulled her down onto the soft bed. He kissed her hungrily, his hands roaming over her body. Nina moaned softly as his hands moved lower, exploring her curves. Just as his fingers were about to reach their destination, she squirmed, her eyes hazy with desire. Ethan, she whispered breathlessly, my visitor hasn't left yet. The fire in Ethan's veins cooled instantly. He pulled back, his gaze full of affection, and kissed her gently on the forehead. I really love you, Nina, he said softly. You've shown me how wonderful love can be. She responded with a long, passionate kiss of her own. Just then, Peter's voice boomed from outside the suite. Ethan, you guys rested up? I found a great spot. Want to check it out? Nina quickly straightened her clothes and, like a frightened deer, fled back to her own room. Ethan just smiled, then went to open the door. Peter stood there, flushed and full of energy. Brother, that ginseng is no joke. You have no idea what a wild ride I just had. You got any more of that stuff? Ethan just laughed. Didn't I just give a whole root to your family? Just go sneak a piece from your dad's. The color drained from Peter's face at the thought of his father's wrath. He quickly changed the subject. Where are Nina and Elaine? Let's get going. Ethan went to Nina's door. She told him to go on without her. She wanted to stay and keep Elaine company. Understanding, Ethan left with Peter. As they walked out of the hotel, a sly look came over Peter's face. Since the ladies aren't coming, how about we go somewhere else? I guarantee you'll like it. Ethan just shrugged, indifferent. It didn't matter to him where they went. Peter took him to a club called Midnight, where the thumping music hit them the moment they walked in. The manager scurried over, fawning over Peter and leading them to a prime booth. Peter ordered the club's most extravagant bottle service package, the Divine Dragon set, and called for the Atmosphere team. A DJ shout echoed through the club, and a group of women in bikinis emerged, each carrying a bottle of champagne, swaying seductively as they made their way to Ethan and Peter's table. Peter, in his element, turned to Ethan. "What do you think, brother? Grand enough for you?" Ethan wasn't particularly impressed. It was his first time in a place like this, and he was mostly just curious. Soon, one of the women sidled up to Peter and dragged him onto the dance floor. The other women surrounded Ethan, pressing against him. One sat on his lap, her hand caressing his thigh, and offered him a drink. "Don't be so serious, handsome," she purred. "You're here to have fun." Ethan downed the drink in one go. The bikini-clad women cheered, and then pulled him onto the dance floor. Just then, Peter returned to their booth, a satisfied smirk on his face as he watched Ethan being surrounded. He took a long drink and pulled another woman into his arms. The celebratory mood was broken by a sneering voice. Well, if it isn't Peter Zhao, the capital's most famous good-for-nothing." The speaker was Charles Chu, the second son of the capital's most powerful family. Peter's eyes narrowed. "Charles Chu, your mouth is as foul as ever." Charles just laughed. "So you met Flora Hua once. Big deal. Manager, get me the 9 Dragons welcome package. Let's show this pauper what a real party looks like." Charles then gestured for the middle-aged man with him to sit down. The man was Felix Liu, and his eyes were fixed on Peter with pure hatred. Ever since Peter had kicked him in Macau, his manhood had been completely non-functional. Charles noticed his guest's expression and asked if he knew Peter. Felix gritted his teeth and confirmed that Peter was the reason he had sought out Charles's help in the first place, to get an introduction to the famed Dr. Chi. Charles advised him to be patient. Peter's family was powerful. Peter, however, felt no need for caution. This was his home turf. He shot Felix a contemptuous glare, confident he could crush the man if he wanted to. The DJ's voice boomed again, announcing the arrival of the 9 Dragons package for the esteemed Mr. Chu. Ethan returned to the booth and asked Peter what was wrong. Peter explained who Charles Chu and Felix Liu were, complaining that Charles was deliberately trying to one-up him. Ethan glanced over at their table. He noticed Felix Liu glaring at him and gave him a mocking smile in return. The smile was the last straw for Felix. "What the hell are you smiling at?" he roared. "You want to die?" Ethan just chuckled. You're going to threaten me? You're a pathetic clown. You shouldn't even be in a bar, considering your equipment is permanently out of order." Felix's face turned purple. He lunged forward, pointing a finger at Ethan's face. "You bastard, watch your mouth." Peter jumped up, blocking his path. "You touch him, and I guarantee you won't leave this city alive," he snarled. Charles Chu stepped in, pulling Felix back. He looked Ethan up and down. "I don't know who you are, but anyone who hangs out with trash like Peter Zhao must be the same. This is the capital. I suggest you learn some humility." Ethan just smirked. "Humility? All right, I'll show you humility." He motioned for the manager and ordered a bottle of Ace of Spades for every single table in the club, except for Charles Chu's. He then turned back to Charles. "Your turn, Mr. Chu. Why don't you show us the generosity of the capital's elite?" Charles's face was a mask of fury. "Listen up, you little punk. Bad news for you. You've made an enemy of me. And you too, Peter Zhao. You'll both regret this." With that, he dragged Felix Liu out of the club. Watching the two men leave, Peter spat on the ground in disgust. That Charles Chu is so pretentious, always acting like some big shot. Without his family, he's nothing. Ethan looked at him with an amused smile. "And you're not relying on the Zhao family's power?" Peter had the grace to look embarrassed. He scratched his head. "Hey, don't lump me in with him. I freely admit I'm a rich playboy. That guy would never admit it." Ethan nodded. It was true. Peter lacked the arrogance typical of his class, which was probably why they had become friends. "All right, let's forget about them and have a good time," Ethan said, raising his glass. The women in bikinis returned to their table, and the party atmosphere resumed. After a while, seeing that Peter was still going strong, Ethan said his goodbyes and headed back to the hotel. In a villa across the city, a furious Charles Chu stared at a file in his hands. He looked up at Felix Liu. "This Ethan Yi is no ordinary person. The information I gathered shows he controls a massive company called Universal Investment, with operations in Tianjin and Shanghai. We're talking about a trillion-dollar enterprise." Felix was stunned. It had taken him 30 years of hard work to build his own company to a value of 200 billion. How could a man in his early 20s possess such wealth? "Are you sure this information is correct?" he asked tentatively. Charles sighed. "I wish it weren't. It cost me a fortune in family resources to dig this up. All his funds originate from overseas, so I suspect he's a front for some foreign syndicate. The good news is, he doesn't seem to have any official government connections, which gives us an opening." This calmed Felix slightly. A man with no government backing was a man who could be taken down. His mind reeled with the thought of Ethan's trillion-dollar fortune. "If he's unprotected," Felix proposed excitedly, "why don't we just take that fortune for ourselves?" A cunning smile spread across Charles's face. "My thoughts exactly. Tomorrow, After I take you to CDR. We'll discuss the details. I need to see if he has any other enemies we can ally with. A prize this big is bound to attract unwanted attention. Back at the hotel, Ethan used his spiritual sense to check the suite. Seeing that Nina was in Elaine's room, he quickly slipped into his own. He had to wash the heavy perfume smell off himself before Nina found out. He scrubbed himself thoroughly in the shower, but just as he finished and put on his pajamas, Nina walked in. She sniffed the air, her brow furrowing. She walked into the bathroom, saw his clothes hanging there, and leaned in to smell them. The scent of perfume was unmistakable. She stormed into Ethan's room and grabbed his ear, twisting it hard. All right, you deadbeat. Your clothes are covered in perfume. You'd better start talking. Where did you and Peter really go? Ethan winced. Easy, Nina, that really hurts. Let me explain. It was all Peter's idea to go to a club. I swear I didn't do anything. I was saving myself for you. That's why I came back so early. You have to believe me. He silently cursed Peter, who would now have to take the fall for this. Back at the club, Peter let out a sudden, loud sneeze. He rubbed his nose, wondering who was thinking about him, before turning his attention back to the beautiful women around him. Nina scrutinized Ethan's face, searching for any sign of deception. Seeing none, she finally let go of his ear. I was just worried you'd get led astray, she said softly. It's not like you're missing anything with me, right? Anyway, I'm going back to my room. Before she could leave, Ethan flashed to the door and kicked it shut. In one smooth motion, he swept her off her feet, tossed her onto the bed, and pinned her beneath him. You're not getting away that easily, he growled, a predatory glint in his eye. Nina blushed. You're terrible. But it's no use, my visitor still hasn't left. Ethan's smile only widened as his gaze dropped to her lips. She understood his intention and, with a shy nod, gave her silent consent. The two of them were soon lost in a long, passionate embrace. The next morning, an impatient Felix Liu was already at Charles Chu's villa. He had to wait an hour and a half for Charles to finally come downstairs. Let's go, Charles, Felix urged. I can't wait to get my little brother back in working order. Charles shot him a sideways glance. Patience, Felix. I said I'd take you to CDR. And I will. Felix gritted his teeth, forcing a smile. You have to understand. My entire future happiness is at stake. As soon as I see him, the 100 million I promised you is yours. This finally got Charles moving. 20 minutes later, they were in the waiting room of Dr. Alistair Chi's courtyard home. Charles greeted the elderly doctor with fawning respect. After some pleasantries, he introduced Felix, who presented the doctor with an expensive gift. Dr. Chi looked Felix over. From your appearance, you seem to be in good health. So what seems to be the trouble? Felix sighed and explained his embarrassing condition. Dr. Chi led him to a private room for an examination. When he returned, his expression was grave. He looked at Charles and said, have your friend take his gift and go home. Felix's heart sank. Dr. Chi, please, if I've done something to offend you, just tell me. I'm desperate. The doctor sighed. It's not that I don't want to help you, but the meridians in your lower body have been severed. My skills are insufficient. Your only hope is to find a healer from the Valley of Rejuvenation. Felix grasped at the sliver of hope. Where is it? I'll pay half my fortune for a cure. Dr. Chi shook his head sadly. I only met a disciple from the valley once, when I was young. I have no idea where it is. I'm sorry, Mr. Liu. Please, go home. The news hit Felix like a physical blow. The Valley of Rejuvenation, a name he had never heard before, was now his only hope, but it was a hope without a path. He stumbled out of Dr. Chi's home, the bright sunlight feeling cold and harsh. As they left, Dr. Chi murmured to himself, the work of a martial artist. It seems the world is about to become chaotic again. Outside, Felix's despair twisted into a mask of pure rage. Don't worry, Charles, he spat, his voice trembling with fury. You'll get your 100 million. As for that damned Ethan Yi and Peter Zhao, I will destroy them. Charles nodded slowly. He hadn't realized a martial artist was involved. This meant Ethan Yi was more than he appeared. Moving against Universal Investment was no longer a decision he could make on his own. This changes things, Felix, Charles said. I need to report this to my family. I'll let you know what my father decides. He then turned and left, leaving Felix alone with his rage. Back in the hotel room, Ethan gazed down at the sleeping Nina. To have found someone like you. This life is enough, he whispered. His voice woke her. What are you saying? She mumbled. As he leaned in to kiss her, she yelped. Ouch, you're on my hair. Embarrassed, he quickly got up and helped her sit. I want you to carry me to the bathroom, she demanded playfully. A princess carry. He happily obliged. After they had both washed up, they went into the suite's living room. Elaine was sitting on the sofa. When she saw Ethan, she looked down at her feet. Brother, I know I was wrong. I'm sorry, she mumbled. Ethan sat next to her. And what exactly were you wrong about? She nodded, her voice soft. Ever since you took me to Shanghai, my attitude changed. Seeing you become so wealthy. My own vanity got the better of me. I became arrogant and selfish. A small smile touched Ethan's lips. I hope you truly mean that. Look at Mom and Dad. They have wealth now, but they haven't changed. Let me leave you with a saying. Disaster befalls those whose virtue doesn't match their status. Character must support wealth. If your virtue is greater than your gains, you will always gain more. But if your gains are greater than your virtue, you will surely lose everything. I hope you understand. Nina came over and took Elaine's hand. It's okay, he's forgiven you. Elaine's cheerful personality returned instantly. She waggled her eyebrows at Nina. I saw you coming out of my brother's room this morning. So did you too? Nina, blushing only slightly, met her gaze. Yes, we did exactly what you're thinking. Got a problem with that? You'd better start practicing calling me sister-in-law. Elaine, surprised by her frankness, quickly changed her tune. Sister-in-law? My dearest sister-in-law, when are you going to give me a little nephew or niece to spoil? I, Elaine the Great, will volunteer for nanny duty. Ethan laughed. You'd spoil the kid rotten. You two are a couple of troublemakers. He then pulled out his phone. All right, you little monster, you want to go out? I'll call our local guide. He dialed Peter's number. Peter's voice was full of excitement. Brother, you have no idea what a night I had after you left. I was a champion. I'm even thinking of going home and sneaking a piece of my dad's ginseng to recharge. Ethan coughed, mentally kicking himself for calling Peter. He glanced nervously at Nina, who thankfully wasn't paying attention. All right, spare me the details of your glorious conquests, Peter, Ethan said, cutting him off. Just tell us where we should go today. Peter hesitated. Are Nina and Elaine coming too? Ethan rolled his eyes. Why? If they weren't, were you planning on taking me to some shady place? Of course not, Peter said quickly. With the ladies present, I'll have to plan something respectable. It's almost noon. How about I pick you all up for lunch first? Ethan agreed and hung up. He told the girls to get ready. Miles away in Shanghai, Harrison Fong had just finished a phone call with the Chu family. Troubled, he summoned his daughter, Melinda. The Chu family in the capital wants us to move against Mr. Yi, he explained, his brow furrowed. I don't know what to do. Melinda thought for a moment. Father, we don't have the resources to challenge Mr. Yi. Even if the Chu family wins, we'll get nothing but scraps. It's not a fight we should be involved in. Harrison sagged into his chair, defeated. You're right. I'll tell them we're staying out of it. Wait, Father, Melinda said, a spark in her eye. Knowing Mr. Ye's character, if we were to secretly help him, we might be rewarded handsomely. Harrison's interest was piqued. Tell me your plan. Melinda laid it out. We pretend to agree to the Chu family's proposal. Then, we discreetly pass key information to Mr. Yi. This must be kept secret from everyone else in the family. Harrison was skeptical. The Chu family isn't stupid. They'll know we're not really helping if we don't take any action. Melinda smiled confidently. They only care about our connections in Shanghai. But they forget about the Qin family, who are close allies of Mr. Yi. We can work with the Qins to put on a show for the Chu family, making it look like we're trying but failing. I'll discuss the details with Luna Shan. A slow smile spread across Harrison's face. Excellent, Melinda. Proceed as you've planned, but be careful. After she left, he marveled at his daughter's cunning. Perhaps it was time to consider her as his successor. He picked up the phone and called the Chu family, telling them the Fong family was in. Back in the capital, Peter arrived at the hotel. Good news, he announced. We're making up for yesterday. We're going to Quanzhou for the best roast duck in the city. Elaine's face lit up. I was hoping you'd say that. I've been dreaming of their duck. Peter puffed out his chest. I may be a playboy, but I'm a man of my word. Everyone laughed as they piled into his car and headed for the famous restaurant. Soon, a platter of glistening, perfectly roasted duck was placed on their table. Elaine eagerly picked up a piece, her face lighting up with pleasure as she ate. Wow, this is incredible. The meat is so tender and the skin is so crispy. Nina tried a piece and her eyes widened in surprise. This is so much better than any roast duck I've ever had before. Seeing their delight, Peter proudly ordered 2 more ducks for the table. Ethan wrapped a few slices of duck in a thin pancake and ate it with relish. So, what's the plan for after this? He asked. Peter thought for a moment. Well, we could go to the Great Wall, or the Forbidden City, or the Summer Palace if you're into Imperial Gardens. It's up to you guys. Elaine wanted to go to all of them, but knew they only had time for one. Nina made the final decision. They say you're not a true hero until you've been to the Great Wall. Let's go there. With the plan set, they devoured the rest of the duck. As they ate, Ethan turned to Peter. You know, you're always spending money so freely, without a care in the world. Have you ever thought about taking over the family business? I could help you if that's what you wanted. Peter immediately waved his hands in dismissal. No way, brother. I'm not some main character from a novel pretending to be a playboy. I genuinely love this lifestyle. I don't have my older brother's business sense, and he'll do a great job as the head of the family. I'm perfectly happy being free to do whatever I want. Elaine, looking up from her plate, gave Peter a thumbs up. I get it, Peter. My dream is pretty much the same. I just want to be a well-fed, carefree slacker. Peter laughed. But my goal is to be a top-tier slacker, one who enjoys the finest food, the best wine, and the most fun. A higher class of slacker than you. Elaine pouted. You're still a slacker at the end of the day. We're two of a kind. Ethan chuckled at their exchange. All right, you two, if you've both decided to be slackers, no need to compete over it. Let's finish up and head out. They left the restaurant and drove towards the Great Wall, their spirits high. Standing at the base of the magnificent structure, they were all in awe. They began the long climb, feeling the weight of history with every step. At the top, they looked out over the rolling hills, marveling at the sheer scale of human achievement. Standing here, Ethan said, you can almost feel the presence of the soldiers who built and defended this wall. Elaine, ever the photographer, called out to them. Brother, Nina, get closer. Let me get a picture of you two. Ethan stepped behind Nina, wrapping his arms around her waist. They leaned their heads together as Elaine snapped the photo. Thrilled with the result, Elaine immediately sent the picture to her mother, May. The message read, Mom, look how in love they are. And a little secret. They spent the night in the same room. You might be getting a grandchild sooner than you think. In Jincheng, Mei Wang dropped the vacuum cleaner she was holding. Her eyes lit up as she read the message. She quickly typed a reply. Elaine, you keep a close eye on them. This means we need to schedule our trip to Shanghai right away. Ethan looked suspiciously at Elaine, who was trying to stifle a giggle. All right, what mischief are you up to now, he asked. She playfully stuck her tongue out at him. Nothing. I just sent Mom a photo. And based on her reply, it looks like we'll be heading to Shanghai very soon. Ethan smiled. That's fine. We have to go sooner or later. If Nina wasn't still in school, we'd already be married. Peter overheard this and sighed dramatically. Brother, you're making me so jealous. When will I ever find a girlfriend as wonderful as Nina? Ethan scoffed. Please, you change girlfriends faster than you change clothes. I don't think you have a problem finding dates. Peter looked genuinely hurt. Those are just for fun, brother. When it comes to something serious like marriage, I don't get a say. For guys from families like mine, it's all arranged alliances. An awkward silence fell over the group, which Elaine quickly broke by suggesting they take a group photo. But as they smiled for the camera, none of them knew that a massive conspiracy against Ethan was already in motion. At that very moment, in the Chu family's ancestral home, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Caspian Chu, the family patriarch, stared intently at Franklin Han. The Fong family in Shanghai has agreed to join us, Caspian said, his voice hard as steel. Felix Liu has rallied several prominent families in Hong Kong. Why is your Han family still hesitating? Has your family fallen so far that you'll simply swallow the insult of your heir losing an arm? Franklin Han's face was grim. Patriarch Chu, this Ethan Yi is at least at the Grandmaster realm. If you have a way to deal with someone of that power, my Han family will support you with everything we have. Caspian Chu threw his head back and laughed. He turned to his son. Charles, why don't you enlighten our guest? Charles respectfully addressed Franklin Han. Sir, my older brother, Clayton, is about to be reassigned to the capital to join the Dragon Store squad. He's already reported the situation to the 9th Bureau of China. If Ethan Yi dares to make a move against a non-practitioner, he will be hunted down. The 9th Bureau has Golden Core realm experts on its roster. Franklin Han looked skeptical. Are you certain the 9th Bureau will intervene? Charles smiled confidently. Rest assured, sir. A high-ranking official from the Bureau will be paying Ethan Yi a visit today to deliver a warning. After a moment of tense consideration, Franklin Han slowly nodded. If Ethan Yi himself is neutralized, then the Han family is in. Caspian Chu's laughter boomed through the hall. An excellent decision. You will not regret this. Meanwhile, in the assembly hall of the 9th Bureau, Director Zhong tapped his finger on the table, calling for silence. Recently, he began, his voice grave, we have detected activity from several hidden sects across the country. We must issue a stern warning to these groups. They will not be permitted to interfere with the lives of ordinary citizens. The captain of the Dragon Shadow Squad, Mu Chongqing, spoke up. Director, with the increasing number of practitioners, our manpower is stretched thin. Just then, Captain Shang Wan of the Dragon Store Squad stood. Director, a report from our new recruit, Clayton Chu, states that a practitioner named Ethan Yi has reached the Grandmaster realm and attacked Spencer Han. Should my squad take action? Director Zhong paused in thought. Dragon Store will not intervene for now. Your priority is training the new recruits. As for this Ethan Yi, Chongqing, you will pay him a visit. Give him a warning and investigate his background. If he is a man of good character, you may extend an invitation to join Dragon Shadow. A smile touched Mu Chongqing's lips. Recruiting a Grandmaster would be a huge boost to his team. He readily accepted the assignment, eager to meet this mysterious young man. After the meeting, Ethan and his friends returned to the hotel. As soon as they were back in the suite, Peter scurried off to his permanently reserved room, where a beautiful woman from the club was already waiting for him. Back in the suite, a tired Elaine went straight to her room. Ethan pulled Nina close, whispering in her ear, how about we share a romantic bath? Nina's cheeks flushed. You pervert. I'm not bathing with you, she said, turning to leave. Just as Ethan reached out to stop her, his phone rang. It was Luna Shun. He answered immediately. Luna's voice was urgent. Mr. Yi, I just received a message from Melinda Fong. The Chu and Han families in the capital have allied with the Fong family in Shanghai. as well as several groups from Hong Kong. They're preparing to move against universal investment. Ethan just smirked. A bunch of fools. He hadn't even come for them yet, and they were ganging up on him. The most surprising part, however, was Melinda Fong. Why would she leak such critical information? He voiced his confusion to Luna. Luna explained, Melinda's plan is clever. The Fong family joins the alliance publicly, but secretly feeds us information. They want to help us, and in return, we need to play along with their charade. Ethan nodded in appreciation. Melinda Fong was indeed a sharp woman. She had found a way to curry his favor without openly defying the other powerful families. Tell Melinda I agree to her plan, Ethan said. I'll remember this favor. The Fong family can proceed with its own development, and Universal Investment will offer its support. But she must honor her original promise to donate 90% of her former assets to charity. You know how to handle the details. I only care about the result. Luna promised to relay the message, confident that Melinda would be overjoyed. After ending the call, she turned to Melinda, who was sitting beside her. Melinda's eyes shone with gratitude. Thank you, Luna. The Fong family finally has a chance to rise again. Please, tell Mr. Yi he has our unwavering loyalty. She then excused herself, eager to share the good news with her father. Back in his hotel room, Ethan was soaking in the bathtub, plotting his counterattack, when the bathroom door creaked open. Nina stood there, wrapped in a fluffy bathrobe, her face a lovely shade of pink. She looked at him, a little shy, and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. Well, you said you wanted to share a bath. Aren't you going to invite me in? Without a word, Ethan reached out and pulled her into the water with him, their bodies pressing close. Little lamb, he murmured, his voice low and husky. The big bad wolf is going to eat you all up. What followed was a passionate encounter, after which Nina lay curled up in his arms, utterly spent. She looked up at him, her eyes soft. I'm yours now, Ethan. You have to treat me well forever. He gently lifted her from the tub and began to dry her with a towel. Of course I will. How about this? Tomorrow we'll go back to Tianjin, pick up my parents, and head to Shanghai so our families can finally meet. She simply nodded, letting him carry her back to the bed. As they lay together, she felt him stir against her again and let out a soft plea. Please, Ethan, have mercy. I don't have any strength left. He suppressed his own desires, knowing she was new to this. He simply held her close, and they drifted off to sleep together. At dawn, in the offices of the Ninth Bureau, Mu Chongqing stared at the file on his desk. It doesn't make any sense, he muttered. This man was completely ordinary. How did he amass such a fortune and break through to the Grandmaster realm in such a short time? He must have some incredible secrets. He stood up, determined. I need to meet with him and find out if he has any ties to foreign powers. He left his office and headed straight for the Dragon Bay Hotel. At the same time, Ethan awoke. He was gazing at the sleeping Nina beside him when his spiritual sense detected a powerful martial artist approaching their suite. He carefully slid his arm out from under her head, threw on a robe, and walked to the door. Just as the presence stopped outside, Ethan opened the door. May I help you? He asked. Mu Chongqing was inwardly stunned. He was at the peak of the Grandmaster realm, a hair's breadth from the next level, yet Ethan had detected his presence. His initial assessment of Ethan's power was wrong. My name is Mu Chongqing, captain of the Ninth Bureau's Dragon Shadow Squad, he said, recovering his composure. My apologies for the intrusion. Might we speak downstairs? Seeing that his visitor was a government official, Ethan relaxed. Please wait a moment while I get dressed. A few minutes later, they were seated in a private lounge downstairs. Mu Chongqing got straight to the point. We received a report from the Chu family that you attacked Spencer Han. Is this true? Ethan nodded. It is. In Shanghai, Spencer Han ordered one of his men, a martial artist, to attack my sister. I had my own guard cripple one of his arms in response. Frankly, I was being merciful by letting him live. Mu Chongqing cursed the Chu family under his breath. They had conveniently left out that crucial detail. Attacking a Grandmaster's family was suicidal. I was not aware of those circumstances, he said aloud. What you did was justified. However, I am here to remind you that practitioners are forbidden from attacking ordinary citizens. Of course, if they provoke you first, that is another matter entirely. Ethan agreed with the principal. You have my word, Captain. I would never harm an innocent person. Now, could you tell me more about this Ninth Bureau? Mu Chongqing's expression grew serious. The Ninth Bureau answers directly to the nation's top leader. We handle all matters related to practitioners and other mysterious events, both domestic and foreign. That is all I can say. Now, Mr. Yi, may I ask what your current cultivation level is? And would you be interested in joining the Dragon Shadow Squad? Ethan respected the Bureau's mission, but he valued his freedom more. Captain, I suppose you could say my abilities are equivalent to the great Grandmaster level. As for joining your squad, I must decline. I'm not one for rules and regulations. But please know that as a citizen of this country, if you ever need my help, I will answer the call. Mu Chongqing was shocked by the confirmation of Ethan's power and disappointed by his refusal. Still, he was glad to know that such a powerful individual was loyal to their country. I understand, he said. The offer will always stand. Be warned, the information from the Chu family was incomplete. I suspect they are plotting against you. Be careful. After Mu Chongqing left, Ethan returned to his room. Nina was just sitting up, rubbing her eyes. Where did you go so early? She asked sleepily. I woke up and you were gone. I thought you'd taken advantage of me and run off. Without a word, Ethan strode over, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her deeply. When he finally pulled away, he licked his lips. Delicious. Nina blushed, pushing him away lightly. Gross. I haven't even brushed my teeth. He just grinned. I like you just as you are. Now go get ready. As soon as Elaine is awake, we're heading back to Tianjin. As Nina walked towards the bathroom, Ethan gave her a playful swat on her rear. She let out a small yelp and scurried the rest of the way, making him laugh out loud. By noon, the three of them were on the high-speed train back to Tianjin. Elaine immediately texted her mother. We're on our way back. We'll be home in an hour. And brother says we're all going to Shanghai tomorrow. May replied instantly. You keep a close eye on them. I saw on the news that college students are allowed to get married now, you know. Elaine texted back. Mom, are you trying to get them married right now? Her mother's response was curt. None of your business. Go away, I need to pack. She immediately hung up on her daughter and called her husband, Evan, to tell him their travel plans. Meanwhile, in Shanghai, the Fong family had an unexpected visitor, Charles Chu. Harrison Fong greeted him with a broad smile. Mr. Chu, what an honor to have you in our humble home. Charles sneered. Let's skip the pleasantries, Mr. Fong. Our funds are in place. It's time for the Fong family to make a move. Harrison's eyes flashed with anger, but he kept his composure. Of course, I am old and tired, so my daughter Melinda will be handling the details and assisting you in any way she can. He then excused himself. Melinda smiled demurely. My father is not well. Please, Mr. Chu, tell me what you need from us. Charles looked at her with disdain. What else do you have besides your local connections? For a start, use them to get the government to cause some trouble for universal investment. Melinda nodded obediently. Consider it done. Please, tell me your full plan so I can coordinate our efforts. Charles laid out his strategy. Create chaos within universal investment, launch attacks on its subsidiary companies, and then buy them up at a discount. He specifically mentioned using old loyalists within the former Fong group to stir up trouble. After he was finished, Melinda asked what the Fong family would get in return. Charles just scoffed internally, thinking they were lucky to even be included. Aloud, he simply said, prove your worth, and you will be rewarded handsomely. Now get to it. As soon as Charles was gone, the smile vanished from Melinda's face. She knew he saw her family as disposable pawns. Thank goodness she wasn't truly on his side. She immediately gathered her subordinates and began making arrangements, then called Luna Shun and relayed every single detail of Charles Chu's plan. Luna, in turn, began preparing their defenses and contacted the Qin family for their cooperation. By the time Ethan and the girls arrived at the villa, May was waiting. She completely ignored a rushing Elaine and enveloped Nina in a warm hug, fussing over her. Ethan smirked at his sister. How does it feel to be ignored, sis? Elaine stuck her nose in the air. You're one to talk. You're getting the same treatment. She then stormed off to her room. Seeing his mother and Nina deep in conversation, Ethan excused himself and headed for the hotel, calling Owen Yi and Zhak Zhang on the way to arrange a meeting at Qin Qian's office. Not long after, Zhak Zhang and Owen Yi arrived at Qin Qian's office. What's so urgent, Ethan? Zhak asked as he walked in. Ethan got straight to the point. The Chu and Han families from the capital, along with several corporations from Hong Kong, are about to launch a joint attack against me. I wanted to give you all a heads up so you don't get caught in the crossfire. The mood in the room instantly became serious. Any one of those entities was a formidable opponent. An alliance of them was a terrifying prospect. Quinn spoke first, his voice firm. Brother, whatever you need, just say the word. I'm with you all the way. Zach chimed in. They may be powerful, but we won't go down without a fight. Ethan was moved by their loyalty. Thank you, my friends. But I already have a plan. I just need you to be prepared. If you come under attack, call me immediately. Quinn nodded. Don't worry about us. You're their primary target. You're the one who needs to be careful. Ethan agreed. I suspect their main focus will be on universal investment in Shanghai. Tianjin should be relatively safe for now. Owen, if they try a hostile takeover of any of our companies, don't let them drive down the stock price. If you're short on capital, call me. Our goal is to tie up as much of their money as possible. Then, when the time is right, we strike back. Owen nodded grimly. I'll bleed them dry. Quinn, seeing that the strategy was set, changed the subject. How long are you in town for, Ethan? We should all get together for a drink. Ethan explained that he was heading back to Shanghai the next day. All right then, Quinn said. I'll arrange for a dinner tonight. Owen, don't forget to invite Autumn Lin and Nini. I've heard so much about them, but never met them. A faint blush appeared on Owen's cheeks. You've gotten mischievous, Ethan. Fine, I'll bring them. But you have to bring your mysterious girlfriend, too. Ethan grinned. Deal. But speaking of which, Quinn, I don't think I've ever met your wife. Quinn's expression turned melancholic. She and our kids are living in the US. I've made too many enemies over the years. It's safer for them there. Ethan offered a comforting word. I'm sure they understand. You should go visit them when you have the chance. Quinn sighed. I miss them a lot. It's just, you know how unstable things are over there. All those shootings. I have bodyguards for them, of course, but you can never be too careful. Which reminds me, do you happen to have any more of those magical talismans? Ethan laughed. I knew you were leading up to that, Quinn. As it happens, I just got a new batch. He pretended to reach into his pocket, but in reality, he accessed the system store and redeemed 30 beginner-level defensive talismans, placing them on the table. There are 30 here. Split them up and give one to each of your loved ones, just in case. Zach saw Quinn grab the whole pile and immediately protested. Hey, Ethan said to split them, not for you to hoard them. Owen chimed in. Exactly, Quinn. I'm a grandmaster now. You really think you can hold on to a single one if I decide to take them? Quinn looked at him, confused. If you're a grandmaster, what do you need these for? Owen shrugged. I don't. But Nini and Autumn do. Now hand them over so we can divide them. Zach nodded emphatically. 10 for each of us. Let's go. Reluctantly, Quinn pulled 20 talismans from his coat and passed 10 to each of them. Ethan watched the scene, amused. All right, I'm heading out. I'll bring Nina to meet you all tonight. And with that, he left. Instead of going straight home, Ethan drove to the Tianjin flower base. A quick scan with his spiritual sense located his father, Evan Yi, tending to a prized orchid in one of the greenhouses. Ethan crept up behind his father, who was completely absorbed in his work, and gave his shoulder a sudden, hard slap. Startled, Evan jumped, the watering can flying from his hand and tumbling toward the delicate orchid. Ethan lunged forward, catching the pot just before it hit the ground. Seeing his prized flower was safe, Evan's anger turned to exasperated laughter. You brat, you nearly gave me a heart attack. If you'd broken my orchid, I'd have skinned you. Ethan grinned. Dad, don't tell me a flower is more important than your own son. Anyway, we're all going to Shanghai tomorrow, so you'll need to arrange for someone to look after your babies here. Evan's expression softened. That's right. Your mother and I are going to finalize things with Nina's family. She's a good kid, Ethan. You treat her right, or you'll have me to answer to. Ethan touched his ear, a sly smile on his face. Don't worry, Dad. Like father, like son. I'm sure I'll be just as whipped as you are. It's still up in the air who'll be bullying who in our relationship. Evan's face flushed. Who says I'm whipped? I just care for your mother. Now get out of here before you annoy me any further. Ethan left his flustered father and returned to the villa to find it empty. He called Nina. Where is everyone? Nina laughed on the other end. What? Is the great Ethan Yi afraid to be home alone? Your mom took me for a spa day, and Elaine went to the driving school. We'll be home in about an hour. After hanging up, Ethan went to his room, consumed 3 spirit-gathering pills, and began to cultivate. Meanwhile, Mu Changqing was reporting to Director Zhong at the 9th Bureau. Director, I've met with Ethan Yi. I believe his strength has reached the great Grandmaster realm. The intel from the Chu family was misleading. He only acted against Spencer Han to protect his sister. The director was stunned. A great Grandmaster in his early 20s was unheard of. What is his attitude towards the Bureau? Mu Changqing continued. He's friendly. He declined my invitation to join, but he promised to help the country if ever needed. The director nodded, relieved. As long as his heart is in the right place, that is enough. A man of his power would be a terrible enemy. At that moment, Ethan felt his mother and Nina return home. He slowly withdrew from his cultivation, feeling the surging spiritual power within him. He was getting closer. Soon, he might be able to attempt a breakthrough to the Golden Core realm. Ethan came downstairs to find his mother in the living room. Mom, we have a dinner party tonight, so we won't be eating at home. May smiled warmly. All right, you two have fun, but don't be too late. We have an early start for Shanghai tomorrow. Ethan took Nina's hand, and they left for the hotel. In the private room, Quinn and Owen were teasing each other while Nini played happily with Autumn Lin. When Ethan and Nina walked in, Nini ran to him, squealing with delight. Ethan, I missed you. Then her eyes fell on Nina. Wow, this lady is so beautiful. Is she your wife? Ethan scooped the little girl into his arms. You have a sweet mouth, you little rascal. Yes, she's my wife. From now on, you have to call her sister-in-law. Nini beamed. Hi, sister-in-law. I have a secret. I have a mommy now. She pointed towards Autumn, who was watching them with a gentle smile. Ethan put Nini down and walked over to Owen. You're a lucky man, brother. When's the wedding? Owen blushed slightly. Don't be ridiculous. Autumn is just Nini's godmother. There's nothing between us. Quinn jumped in. Don't be a fool, Owen. A beautiful young woman devotes all her time to your daughter, and you think she doesn't have feelings for you? You'd better grab your chance before you lose her. Ethan added his support. Quinn's right. Are you telling me you feel nothing for Autumn? You're the only one standing in your own way. Owen fell silent, torn between his lingering grief for his late wife and his growing feelings for the kind woman who had brought so much joy into their lives. Seeing his friend's turmoil, Ethan changed the subject and went to greet Zach Zhang, who had just arrived. A moment later, Zach, having been filled in, came up with a plan. He whispered something in Nini's ear. The little girl then ran to her father. "Daddy," she asked, her big eyes full of innocence. "Are you unhappy because I love my godmother?" The question snapped Owen out of his indecision. He smiled lovingly at his daughter. "Of course not, sweetheart. Your happiness is my happiness." Nini clambered into his lap. "Daddy, I love my godmother so much. I wish she could be my real mommy and live with us forever. All my friends have a mommy and a daddy." Her words were the final push Owen needed. The walls around his heart crumbled. "If that's what you want, Nini," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "then I have no objections." Nini cheered and ran to Autumn's side. A renewed Owen stood up and faced his friends. "All right, everyone's here. Let's get this party started." Ethan and Quinn gave Zach a discreet thumbs up. After everyone was seated, Owen stood, pulling Autumn to his side. "Everyone, this is my girlfriend, Autumn Lynn. And thank you, my brothers. If it wasn't for you, I might have lost this wonderful woman." Autumn, tears of joy welling in her eyes, could only manage a choked, "Thank you." Quinn and Zach raised their glasses. "To the new couple, we wish you a lifetime of happiness together." Nina and Autumn, blushing, touched their juice glasses together, their faces glowing with joy. Little Nini, mimicking the adults, raised her own glass of juice, making everyone laugh. The atmosphere was warm and celebratory. Quinn turned to Owen. "You'd better drink up tonight, my friend. Don't worry if you get too drunk to walk. I've already arranged a big room for your new family of 3. Owen, glancing warmly at a blushing Autumn, drained his glass. "Bring it on. Let's drink until we can't stand." The men drank round after round. At one point, Nini raised her glass. "Daddy, a toast to you. I'm so happy I finally have a mommy." Looking at his daughter nestled in Autumn's arms, the last of Owen's doubts vanished. He raised his glass. "To Autumn and to Nini. I, Owen Yi, swear I will never let either of you down." Ethan grinned. "So, when are you making it official? I've already got a wedding gift for you." Owen laughed heartily. "If Autumn agrees, we'll get the certificate tomorrow. As for a wedding, we don't really need one. This gathering with our closest friends is more than enough." The announcement prompted another round of celebratory toasts. Eventually, the party wound down, giving the new couple some time alone. Ethan helped a very drunk Owen back to his room. As he was leaving, he discreetly slipped a small pill from the system store into Owen's pocket. "What was that?" Owen slurred. Ethan smiled. "A wedding gift. It's a youth-retaining pill. Make sure your new wife takes it." Back at the villa, May scolded Ethan for the smell of alcohol on him. "You drank this much knowing we have to travel tomorrow?" Ethan, sobering up instantly, sheepishly allowed himself to be herded into the bathroom. As he showered, his thoughts drifted to Owen and Autumn's happiness and his own future with Nina. He was pulled from his reverie when Nina came in with a set of clean pajamas, her face flushing as she quickly left them for him and scurried out. In another room, Autumn gently tucked a sleeping Nini into bed before turning her attention to Owen. She smiled as she looked at him, then began to gently clean his face and body with a warm, damp cloth. "You're finally mine, Owen," she whispered, her heart full of a quiet, profound joy. The next morning, after a shower, Ethan found his mother bustling around the living room. "Mom," he asked, "for our visit tomorrow, should I book a hotel for the meeting, or should we go directly to Nina's house?" May smacked him lightly on the back of the head. "We are going to pay our respects to her parents. We will go to their home. We are not going to a hotel like we're trying to show off." Ethan rubbed his head. "You're right, Mom. I don't have any experience with this. You really are the boss of this family." His father, Evan, cleared his throat from the couch, trying to assert his presence. May shot him a sharp look. "Do you have an objection, dear?" Evan immediately put on a fawning smile. "Of course not, my love. The boy is right. This family couldn't function without you." May beamed, satisfied. "That's what I thought. Now, Ethan, you get some rest. And work hard on giving your mother a grandchild soon." Blushing furiously, Ethan fled to his room. The next morning, the entire family boarded a flight to Shanghai. In Shanghai, Nina's parents, Charlie Lee and Jean Yang, were in a flurry of preparation. Charlie had taken the day off work, and Jean had cleaned their apartment until it sparkled. "I wonder if they've landed," Jean fretted. "Maybe we should have gone to the airport to meet them." Charlie smiled calmly. "Relax. Nina will let us know when they're close." Just then, a text from Nina arrived. "We've landed. On our way. See you in about 30 minutes." The Yi family arrived, bearing gifts from Tianjin. Jean and Charlie rushed downstairs to greet them. After the introductions were made, Jean warmly ushered everyone inside. Once they were all settled with tea, May got straight to the point. "We came today to talk about the children. My husband and I are incredibly fond of Nina. Since she hasn't graduated yet, we were thinking we could formalize their engagement now and hold the wedding after she finishes her studies. That way, there's no room for gossip." Jean smiled warmly. "We feel the same way about Ethan. Your proposal is very thoughtful. We wholeheartedly agree." Relieved, May took a bank card from her pocket and placed it in Jean's hand. "Please, don't refuse. This is the bride price for Nina. Even though we're all in agreement, we must observe the proper traditions. We can't let such a wonderful girl be wronged. Seeing that refusal would be an insult, Jean accepted the card, mentally deciding to give the money to the young couple after their wedding. With the business concluded, Charlie suggested they all head to a nearby restaurant he had booked to celebrate. As the two families walked through the community garden on their way to the restaurant, a group of gossipy, neighborhood women descended upon them. "Jean, you have guests," one asked. Jean, despite her annoyance at their past rumor-mongering, was in a good mood. Yes, Nina's boyfriend and his family came from Tianjin to discuss the children's future. The woman's eyes widened with envy. "Oh, that's the one who gave her that luxury car, right? I bet the bride price was huge." Jean just smiled politely. As long as the children are happy, that's all that matters. But as they walked away, another woman with a prominent mole on her lip sneered just loud enough for them to hear. "Bride price? I bet they didn't give a cent. She's probably just throwing herself at them for their money. They'll get tired of her and kick her to the curb soon enough." Jean's face darkened, but before she could say a word, May spun around. She marched back to the woman and slapped her, hard, across the face. "Who do you think you are?" May roared, jabbing a finger in the woman's face. "Nina is more precious to me than my own daughter. If you ever dare to say another bad word about her, I will skin you alive." Then, she whirled on Ethan. "And you, listen to me. If you ever do anything to wrong Nina, you'll answer to me. Transfer 100 million to her right now. No, make it 1 billion. Ethan, catching on to his mother's dramatic performance, played along. "Mom, what did I do? And why do you suddenly need $1 billion? "Why do I need it?" she thundered. "I need it to support my daughter-in-law. I thought 20 million was a generous bride price, but I hear people saying she's a gold digger. Fine, I'll show you a real sky-high bride price." Ethan nodded seriously. "Let me do the transfer, Mom. Your card has a limit." May snatched the bank card back from a stunned Jean and handed it to Ethan. He quickly opened his banking app and transferred 1 billion yuan to the card, while also sending the same amount to his mother's personal account for good measure. May then grabbed Ethan's phone and shoved the transaction confirmation in the mole woman's face. "Open your eyes and look. My daughter-in-law's bride price is 1 billion and 20 million. If I hear anyone else spreading rumors, they'll have to deal with me." She then smiled, tucked the card back into Jean's hand, and said cheerfully, "Come on, everyone. I'm starving. Let's not let some disgusting flies ruin our appetite." The gossiping women were left standing in stunned silence. At the restaurant, Elaine gave her mother a thumbs up. "Mom, you were amazing. But, is Nina really more precious than me?" May softened. "Of course not, you silly girl. Nina is my future daughter-in-law. She's family. I'll protect her like my own. But you are my baby girl. My love for you both is equal." Nina, seated next to Ethan, was deeply moved. She shot him a look, playfully puffing out her chest as if to say, "See? If you ever bully me, I'm telling your mom." While the women bonded, the two fathers, Evan and Charlie, had discovered a shared passion for flowers and tea, and were happily lost in their own conversation, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded. With all the dishes on the table, Jean Yang smiled and invited everyone to eat. She passed a platter of large hairy crabs to May and Evan. "You're probably more used to the river crabs up north," she said warmly. "You should try our southern hairy crabs. They look similar, but the taste is quite different." Evan wasted no time, cracking one open and taking a large bite. Besides being a bit bigger with thicker claws, I don't see much of a difference," he declared. "When you come to Tianjin, we'll charter a boat and eat them fresh from the sea. Now that's what I call delicious." May rolled her eyes at her husband. "Don't mind him," she said to Jean. "He has no appreciation for fine dining." The table erupted in laughter. The two families ate and drank, with Evan and Charlie Lee hitting it off immediately, deep in conversation. Watching the warm scene unfold, Nina felt a profound sense of happiness. Love was only truly perfect when blessed by family. At that moment, Jean took out the bank card and handed it back to May. "We are so happy for the children," she said sincerely. "But this bride price is far too much. We simply cannot accept it." May had anticipated this. "I understand your concern about what people might say," she said softly. "But this isn't just for show. I genuinely love Nina. You have such a wonderful daughter, and we will treat her like our own. Please, don't worry." Ethan gave Nina a subtle nod. Nina quickly added, "Mom, please accept it. Otherwise, people might think you're not happy with the engagement." Jean playfully chided her daughter. "You silly girl, of course I'm happy. All right, I'll hold on to it for now. For my future grandchildren." Everyone laughed, and Elaine chimed in. "Brother, sister-in-law, you'd better get to work. I can't wait to be an aunt." Nina's face turned bright red as she shyly lowered her head. But while one family celebrated, another was consumed by rage. In the Fong household, Charles Chu and Felix Liu were screaming at Melinda Fong. "Look at this mess you've made," Charles bellowed. "Why is Universal Investment still operating? Why haven't you sicked the authorities on them? Fire safety, tax audits, do I have to teach you everything? And their real estate projects were only shut down for 2 hours. I want an explanation." Melinda's eyes flashed with contempt for a split second before she put on a mask of pitiful grievance. "Master Chu, We had everything arranged, she sobbed. But the Qin family intervened. As you know, my family is not what it once was. How can we fight against the most powerful family in Shanghai? Charles's face grew darker. Your family is a bunch of incompetents. Fine, I will deal with the Qins myself. But if they back off and you still can't handle this, don't blame me for dealing with your family as well. Felix Liu quickly added his support. Master Chu is right. But the good news is, our funds from Hong Kong have arrived. I managed to raise 100 billion in cash. We can proceed with our plan. Charles nodded, placated. Now that the money is here, I'll have my people start a media smear campaign to drive down their stock price. Then, when the time is right, we'll move in for the kill. He turned back to Melinda. You'd better be ready to cooperate. Without waiting for a reply, he and Felix stormed out, heading straight for the Qin family estate. The moment they were gone, Melinda sent an urgent message to Luna Shun, warning her of their plan. Just then, Ethan's family had finished their meal and returned to Nina's home. A few moments later, his phone rang. It was Luna. Mr. Yi, she said, her voice tense. The Chu Alliance has made its move. They've pulled around 500 billion yuan and are planning to crush our stock price to swallow the entire Universal Group. Ethan just chuckled. They really underestimate me, don't they? They think they can challenge me with such a paltry sum. Hearing Ethan's calm demeanor, Luna Shun felt her own nerves settle. Mr. Yi, it seems you already have a plan. Instead of answering directly, Ethan posed a question of his own. Luna, do you know how our great leader responded back in the early days when the Soviets threatened us with nuclear weapons? Luna's breath caught in her throat. The idea was insane. Mr. Yi, she stammered. Are you planning a home-swapping gambit? Aren't you afraid you'll lose everything if it goes wrong? Ethan sounded completely at ease. Exactly. Think bigger, Luna. Universal Group is still new. If we lose it, we can just build another. Don't you have confidence in yourself? Her perspective shifted instantly. I understand, Mr. Yi, she replied, her voice firm with newfound resolve. I will hold the line and tie up their funds. I won't let them escape. Good, Ethan continued. I'm sending another trillion yuan to Universal's accounts. Your job is to drain their capital. Don't let them take over easily. Meanwhile, I'm sending Hudson Yi to Hong Kong to acquire their parent companies. Shanghai is in your hands. He hung up, immediately transferred $1 trillion to both Universal and Hudson, and instructed Hudson to leave for Hong Kong. When Ethan ended the call, Nina came to his side. If you have important business, you should go. I can take your parents back to the villa. He smiled, gently pinching her cheek. Nothing is more important than being with you, especially today. Now, come give your dear husband a kiss. Blushing, Nina glanced around to make sure no one was looking, then quickly stood on her toes to plant a kiss on his cheek before darting away like a startled deer. Meanwhile, at the Qin family estate, the atmosphere was tense. The patriarch, Marcus Qin, had summoned his eldest son, Tyson, to his study. I've been told you used our family's connections to help Universal Group, Marcus said, his voice stern. Explain yourself. Tyson was unfazed. Dad, don't overreact. Ethan Yi is a good friend. What's the big deal about helping him out a little? Marcus slammed his hand on the desk. You're the future head of this family. You need to think about the family's interests before you act. Seeing his father's fury, Tyson quickly adopted a more serious tone. Father, hear me out. The Chu family is powerful, but we are not afraid of them. And think about it. If they succeed in taking over Universal, wouldn't our position in Shanghai be threatened? I believe helping Ethan oppose them is in our best interest. Marcus's anger subsided. He wasn't truly angry that his son had helped Ethan, but rather that he hadn't leveraged the situation for the family's benefit. It is good that you can see the bigger picture, he said, his voice softening. I don't object to you helping him, but as the heir, you must always put the family first. Just as Tyson nodded in understanding, the butler knocked. Sir, Charles Chu and Felix Liu are here to see you. Marcus looked at his son. You handle them. This will be a test of your abilities. Tyson went to the reception room, where he greeted the two men with a polite smile. Charles sneered. Cut the act, Tyson. You know exactly why we're here. As Tyson's expression darkened, Felix quickly intervened. Tyson, please forgive Master Chu's temper. We've come to ask the Qin family to stay out of our dispute with Ethan Yi. We would, of course, compensate you generously for your neutrality. Tyson was about to deliver a sharp retort when a familiar, mocking voice echoed from the doorway. Well, if it isn't little Chuckles Chu, shouting like you own the place. And look, it's Alex the eunuch, at least he knows to offer a bribe. Peter Zhao strolled in, clapping Tyson on the shoulder. Cousin, why are you wasting your breath on these two? Just throw them out. Tyson Qin smirked at his cousin. Peter, what are you doing in Shanghai? Aren't you afraid my uncle will tan your hide? Peter puffed out his chest proudly. My dad is actually happy I'm here. He gave me a huge allowance and told me to hang out with Ethan, hoping I'd bring back some treasures for him. Charles Chu and Felix Liu glared at Peter, who seemed to take special pleasure in tormenting them. Realizing their visit was pointless, they turned and left without another word. Once they were gone, Tyson's demeanor became serious. All right, Peter, why are you really here? To help you, cousin, Peter said with a grin. More accurately, to save the Chin family. My dad sent me. He said your father is too focused on profits. If the Chu family offered him a big enough incentive, he might just turn on Ethan. And if that happens, Ethan would crush the Chin family without a second thought, and I don't want my aunt and cousins getting caught in the crossfire. Tyson paled slightly. He knew his father might indeed be swayed by a large enough offer. Is Ethan really that powerful? He asked. Can he take on the Chu alliance and us at the same time? Peter's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. Cousin, think about it. Universal Group alone is worth over $1 trillion. And that's just in Shanghai. Plus, my dad found out that Clayton Chu reported Ethan to the 9th Bureau for the incident with Spencer Han. And what happened? Nothing. Ethan is completely untouched. You understand what that means, don't you? Tyson felt a wave of relief, glad he had chosen the right side. He looked at his cousin with a newfound respect, mixed with a healthy dose of envy for his incredible luck in befriending such a man. Back at the villa, Ethan's family was preparing to return to Tianjin the next day. May looked at Ethan, puzzled. Son, why did you transfer $1 billion to my account? I don't need that much money. Ethan took her hand. Mom, that's for you. I want you to use it to help our relatives who are struggling. If it's too much trouble to manage, just give each family $10 million. We're well off now, but we can't forget the people who helped us when we had nothing. May's eyes filled with emotion. You're right, son. You've become a responsible man. I'm so proud of you. Elaine, who had been listening, suddenly spoke up. Brother, I have an idea. We should also set up a family medical fund. A serious illness can bankrupt a family these days. Ethan's eyes lit up. He hadn't expected such a thoughtful suggestion from his sister. That's a brilliant idea, he said. Dad, Mom, what do you think? I'll contribute $10 billion to start it. You can be in charge of your respective sides of the family. May shook her head. I'll let your uncle handle my side. I'm too busy waiting for grandchildren. Evan chimed in. And I'll have your older uncle manage mine. I need to get back to my orchids. Ethan agreed. All right. When you get back to Tianjin, you can hold a family meeting and announce the plan. That evening, after dinner, Ethan texted Nina. Want to go for a walk? A moment later, her reply came. Wait for me. Half an hour later, she texted again. I'm here. Ethan went outside to find her waiting by the gate, her smile as bright as the stars. He took her hand, and they walked without a destination, the comfortable silence speaking volumes. Suddenly, Nina pointed to a humble stall on the side of the road. Ethan, look. A noodle stand. Can we try it? Ethan followed her gaze to an elderly man, his back bent with age, skillfully cooking noodles over a steaming pot. A few other elderly customers sat at small, simple tables. Sure, Ethan agreed. I haven't had noodles in a while. As they approached, the old man greeted them warmly. Here for some noodles, kids? Nina smiled. What kind of noodles do you have, sir? The man looked apologetic. I only make one kind, young lady. Simple noodles in clear broth. I can add a boiled egg. It's not much, I know. Not many people like it so plain these days. Nina looked at Ethan, her eyes asking the question. 2 bowls, please, Ethan said to the man, with an egg in each. Just as they sat down, a boy in a school uniform came running up, out of breath. Master, he exclaimed, his eyes shining. You're finally here. Are you here to see me? I'm on break now. I can start my training. Ethan recognized his young disciple, Winston Wei. He had almost completely forgotten about the boy. Winston, Ethan said, feeling a bit embarrassed. Good to see you. Tell your grandmother you'll be with me for a while starting tomorrow. Have you eaten? Want some noodles? Winston was about to refuse when his stomach let out a loud rumble. Understanding immediately, Nina went and ordered another bowl from the old man. Thank you, master's wife, Winston said respectfully. After introducing Winston to Nina, the old man brought their noodles over. Winston carefully placed the 3 steaming bowls on the table. Master's wife, you have to try this. Grandpa Lee's noodles are the most authentic you'll ever have. Nina was curious. You two seem to know each other well. We're old neighbors, Winston explained. And Grandpa Lee was a great hero when he was young. See his left leg? It's a prosthetic. He was badly injured in the Vietnam War and had to have it amputated. Nina's eyes widened, and she looked closely at the old man. His left leg did indeed seem stiff. She then looked back at Ethan, who held a deep respect for the veterans who had served their country. He turned to Winston, his brow furrowed. If that's the case, doesn't he have any children to take care of him? Why is he still working so hard at his age? Winston sighed heavily. Grandpa Lee never married and has no children. He sent all of his government pension to the families of his comrades who died in the war. Once their children were grown, he started donating it all to an orphanage. Nina's voice was a soft whisper. An entire generation fought so that we could have the lives we have today. Ethan, we have to do something. They gave their youth for this country. We can't let our heroes live out their final years in obscurity. She stared at the old man's stooped figure, which now seemed to stand taller than any man she had ever seen. Ethan squeezed Nina's hand tightly. Those who gather firewood for the people should not be left to freeze in the snow, he said, his voice firm. Nina, there are countless veterans like Grandpa Lee who risked everything for this country. The nation is still developing, And since we have the ability, we should also contribute. Nina's eyes welled with tears. Ethan, I want to use the bride price money to help them. Can I? He gently stroked her hair. Of course, Nina. On that note, have you completed all your required credits for school? If so, you should apply for early graduation. She playfully slapped his hand. Ethan, be serious. I'm having an emotional moment here, and you're talking about my graduation. He saw the misunderstanding, and a grin spread across his face. You think I want you to graduate early so I can marry you sooner? You're completely wrong, haha. Nina narrowed her eyes and twisted his ear. What? You don't want to marry me? Ouch. My dear wife, have mercy, he pleaded. Winston is right here. Give me some face. Winston, seated nearby, quickly ducked his head. Please, continue. I didn't see anything. These noodles are delicious. Nina finally let go. All right, then tell me. Why do you want me to graduate early? Ethan's expression turned serious. I was thinking we could start our own foundation, with you in charge of managing it. That way, we can ensure every single cent goes to the people who actually need it. There are too many fake charities out there just lining their own pockets. Nina listened intently, nodding. She had heard the stories online. After a moment, she looked at him with determination. That's a great idea. I'm still a few credits short, though. How about this? You start setting up the foundation, and I'll take over officially as soon as I graduate. Ethan smiled, satisfied. That's a perfect plan. He then turned to Winston, who had finished his own bowl of noodles, and pushed his untouched one towards the boy. Winston, can I get your phone number? It would make it easier to pick you up tomorrow. The boy looked down, embarrassed. I'm sorry, master. I don't have a phone. My grandmother has worked so hard to raise me. I don't want to be another burden on her. Ethan was deeply moved by the boy's maturity and kindness. He had chosen his disciple well. All right then, Ethan said gently. I'll meet you back here tomorrow at noon. Make sure you tell your grandmother so she doesn't worry. It's getting late, your master's wife and I are heading home. They left Winston and walked hand in hand back to the villa. At the gate, Ethan pulled Nina into a soft embrace. Want to come in for a bit? She looked up at the night sky. It's late. Your parents are probably asleep. I don't want to disturb them. He nodded, giving her one last hug before she turned and walked away. The next morning, after taking his parents and sister to the airport, Ethan was driving back into the city. As he watched their plane disappear into the clouds, a news report came on the radio. We interrupt this program for a breaking story. A large-scale wage dispute has erupted at Universal Real Estate, a newcomer to the city's property market. All construction on their new district projects has been halted. City officials have stepped in to mediate. Ethan scoffed. Universal Group had a massive cash flow. They would never miss a payroll. This was clearly a dirty trick by the Chu Alliance, meant to tarnish their reputation. They really will stoop to any level, he muttered to himself. He switched off the radio, pulled over, and walked into a nearby Huawei flagship store.